What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto Sotri. What if Naruto was replaced by his perfect twin sister? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Naruto sighed again for the fifth time that day while his gaze is outside the carriage. They are now on their way to the Uchihas to visit the other kingdom. He should have been happy because of his personality, he's an adventure seeker type of person. New places always thrilled him up, but he can't make himself like this particular visit at all. This isn't just a visit after all. For him, this is a nightmare. He curled his hands and clenched it tightly while it is on his lap until it turned almost white, feeling his wariness build up in every second he sat inside the carriage. His mother, seeing it, touched his son's clenched hand and rubbed it soothingly, trying to ease the growing tension she can visibly see on her son. Naruto, feeling the warm hands on his own, tore his gaze from the window and looked at his mother. "Naruto," she said gently. Hearing his mother speaking, he asked, "Can we just cancel this visit, mother?" Naruto asked quietly, looking at his mother sitting across him with attempt calmness Naruto never really satisfactorily hid as he never mastered hiding his own emotions. That particular ability belongs to his sister. "I'm sorry son, but we can't. This isn't just a plain visit and you know it," his mother said gently, and she felt his fist clenched even tighter, if that was even possible. His mother smiled softly, understanding what his son is feeling. He had never seen his son like this before. Well, except for that time when the prince was really upset 7 years ago. She vaguely realized that she never got the chance to know what was wrong with his son during that time. She wanted to know why, but at the very second after that thought occurred, she decided that now really is not a good time to coax her son to tell him what really was wrong with him during those times. "That's exactly why, Mom. This isn't just a plain visit. I'm going to have a commitment with that man." "A man, Mom, a man," Naruto said, clearly emphasizing the word commitment in the sentence he had said with a note of restrained frustration in his voice. "And I don't even know him," he ended, saying it almost hysterically. Her grip on her son's hand tightened. "Naruto, son, you're not going to have a commitment to him," she started, mimicking how her son said the word commitment earlier. Naruto scrunched his nose in a way that clearly says that he was not amused. His mother continued after she had shook her head, dismissing his son's action carelessly that clearly gave the impression that she had already done it before. For how many times already? "You're just going to replace your twin sister for the time being and marry him in her place. You'll return back to your life after the marriage because then, your sister will be back. And commitment with a man isn't a horrible thing, Naruto. It's accepted in our society, you know it." Naruto brushed off the last two sentences his mother made and instead said, "Where the hell is she? Narima can't just possibly leave and let me marry him. Naruto, watch your language. And Narima likes the man and she also loves you, so she wouldn't leave this and let you marry the Uchiha prince, especially when she already knows you don't like the idea. If her presence isn't really important in the Suna kingdom, she won't go. You know that. And also, the man won't recognize that you are a man cause you look exactly like your sister with your wig and dress. They already saw each other, so there will be no problem. You'll still have your freedom," his mother said, and he had no choice but to relent and looked at the window again in frustration. He heard his mother sigh. He knew he is being difficult, but they can't possibly continue to do this farce. It would be unfair to the other and also to him. He sighed again, calming himself down. He is wearing the dress of his twin sister and is wearing a curly long auburn wig that is difficult to remove so he wouldn't get caught. He didn't need to change the color of his eyes as he and his sister share the same color of eyes, blue. The only difference is Narima's eyes are slightly dimmed than him. He didn't think his eyes would be that noticeable, so he refused to wear contacts. He hates the things. And because he is originally thin, the people in their palace who were fixing him and knew what really is happening and who he is, with C admittedly are few, did not have difficulty in making him look very feminine like his sister, especially when they already look so much alike. His voice is also originally androgynous to begin with, so everything is set and perfect for pretending to be her sister. His beloved twin sister, Narima, left without saying a word to them and just left a note beside the latter's bedside table. It was stated that she would be away for the whole month to sort some problems in the relations between the kingdom of Konoha and Suna, and her presence is required for she is the only one the prince of Suna, now the king of his country, Gaara, would listen to, aside from him, of course. Naruto began to form evil thoughts about the Konoha kingdom, particularly his uncle. Is he still going on about forcing an arranged marriage with Gaara and Sakura? His uncle should know better than to force anything with his daughter. Princess Sakura, his cousin, made it plainly clear she wouldn't marry their friend. She said she still enjoys her free life. And Gaara definitely despised anyone forcing something on him, like he is expected to only listen and nothing more. And since his father already retired, he is the one who now runs the kingdom and the decision lies on him. Those two are equally stubborn if their minds are set on something. Of course he knew why Narima felt the need to go there and help solve the conflict between the two kingdoms. He wasn't an ignorant fool and a complete idiot. He can clearly feel and see the growing tension between the two because of the conflict they have. Naruto can already predict that a war will soon engage and commence if the problem won't be solved soon. Gaara is becoming angry at the constant threat the king of Konoha says whenever Gaara objects to the arranged marriage. Gaara was especially angry because his uncle, king of Konoha, won't even listen to the angry demands of his daughter, Sakura, to stop the constant threat. She clearly didn't want to settle down. But why can't he go? Gaara would listen to him. Why can't Narima just tell him to go and help instead of going there without any word and just leave a letter? Why did she have to go off and leave all of her affairs to him? Did Gaara specifically ask for her? His mother looked at the forced calm feature of her son, then sighed softly, not noticing the slight darkening of her son's eyes. She can't blame him. Naruto is a hyper kid. He loves to seek adventure and is constantly in different places in order to satiate his thirst for new and interesting things. So, this situation for his son is like a cage, she is sure. She knows his son too much cause her husband is just like that. She looked at Naruto before speaking. Son, I know how much you love your freedom and how much you hate formalities. That's why we've allowed you to travel up to your heart's content. We even allowed your request to not let others know of your existence, and we knew what this situation is to you. But please do us a favor, Naruto. The Uchiha kingdom is a powerful kingdom just like us. For that, we need their alliance. We can't have them as our enemy, she said softly. Naruto cut off his own thoughts that weren't really healthy to face her mother. Instead of accepting her mother's request quietly, he huffed in annoyance. He won't back down without a fight. I know, Mom, but can't we just wait until Narima is here? Heck, she knew she would come in the Uchiha kingdom. She should have just sent me there. Gaara would also listen to me. A month, Mom, a month. She would be gone in a month and her wedding is in 3 weeks. And you expect me to marry that prince? Naruto asked hysterically, and her mother began to lose her formality, which were already happening whenever she's with her son, and laughed. Naruto looked at her as if she had gone mad. Naruto, you'll just replace your sister. Even if you do marry the prince, the Uchiha kingdom will assume he married your sister. Don't be hysterical, she said, but then, his counter is ready. I didn't even see the face of that prince. Is he good? Is he fun to be with? Won't I be bored? What? Mom, I don't know him, he said while moving his hands in different direction, stating quite firmly his agitation and distress. That his mother's laugh piped down and she looked at her son. Why do you feel the need to know if you'll like the man? His mother asked confusedly. Because, Mom, I'm going to spend 3 weeks with him. Being my sister is already frustrating. I don't even know if I could last the whole week if he's a stuck-up lousy prince. Naruto, we asked you to come with us the first time we went to the Uchiha kingdom to know the prince, and you said that it isn't necessary cause you trust the judgment of your sister. Now, you're saying that it is our fault you didn't even see a glimpse of the man? Come on, darling, she said, and Naruto mumbled under his breath furiously, but her mother caught every word her son is saying. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have allowed Narima to drag me back to the kingdom. Her mother chuckled and he sighed in frustration. He should have known his mother would just laugh at his problem. When her mother was about to say something, because he clearly weren't intending to back down and convince his mother to return, their carriage stopped and announced they already arrived. Naruto grumbled a curse under his breath when he realized he won't have a chance now to go back, seeing as they already arrived. It should have been incoherent, but his mother still caught his words. As expected, his mother chastised him for his own choice of words. He knows how to speak formally, but he despised speaking it because of the automatic response it accompanies. He knew people never speak the truth when they use that type of speaking. And he had already been influenced by the people he had encountered in his adventures, so his words are a little bit different from his family. and he's comfortable using the informal words. Naruto, behave. Take the attitude of your sister to avoid suspicion. We can't have the Uchihas accuse us of anything. And I personally don't like the queen be mad at me. We are friends after all. His mother said after her lecture, and he grudgingly nodded. He didn't have any choice at the moment. They can't back down now or his parents will be executed at the Uchiha kingdom at the precise moment they knows they were deceived. Remembering vividly his sister's every move and attitude and knowing how to do it properly, he stepped out of the carriage and said his thanks to the coachman. The latter welcomed it and looked at him understandingly. Naruto bitterly smiled and followed his mother inside the castle. As he went inside, he saw how the Uchiha castle was intricately designed that it temporarily stopped his thoughts from roaming on his problems cause the castle piqued Naruto's interest. His attitude almost surfaced but remembered just in time that he is not Naruto at the moment but Narima. He sighed regretfully. He feels that the castle is built especially for him as every time he looked or just glanced, the castle seems to be calling him. He earned a look from his mother because of his sigh. Mom, don't look at me like that. I managed to control myself. How am I supposed to know I would like the castle of the Uchihas? The castle is beautiful, Mom, breathtaking, you must understand, he said, sounding like a child but still kept the princess stand his sister always do. Her mother smiled softly and was about to reply when they heard a voice talking to them. Ha ha ha, I am glad you liked it. I thought the castle isn't your liking at all, Princess Narima. You didn't praise the castle when you visited last year. You even walk, talk and stand like a delicate but firm young lady that made the impression you didn't like it here. I had thought about doing the castle again. A man the age of his father said. The man's feature is serious and hardened that Naruto had a hard time adjusting to the attitude of the man, so contrast to his physical appearance. Upon setting his shock out of his system and registering to his mind what the latter said, he forgot about his duty and in an instant brought his attitude in the surface. He began to walk towards the man he assumed as the king, shaking his head furiously. No, you can't do that. This castle is beautiful, he said and immediately gasped when he realized what he'd done. He composed himself and mentally smacked himself. You idiot, you totally ruined it. If they suspected something about your attitude, you are so dead. You are supposed to be Narima right now. He then looked at his back, looking at his mother's worried smile, and looked at the Uchiha king once more before bowing slightly, reverting back to the attitude of his sister. I apologize for my misconduct. I shouldn't have said that to you, sir, he said and slightly cringed at the formality of his voice. Grr. I'm starting to hate my sister. No problem, Princess Narima, I understand. Just be yourself. Why must you be so formal? The king, Naruto remembered his name as Fugaku, said and Naruto answered mentally. Yes, why must she? I can't believe she's not tired of being formal all the time, but of course, even if he wanted to say that, he can't cause he is not Naruto right now but Narima, so he said. I am myself, sir. I just reacted like that cause my brother would love to explore your palace. You see, that idiot is an adventure-seeker person and seeing the castle again for the third time made my suspicion firmer that he'll like to explore it. Naruto said, and very much resembling the voice of his twin sister, he spoke in an uncaring manner with his voice speaking fondly about his brother. He hesitated a bit for speaking of how many times his sister visited. He had to rack his brain on one of his and Narima's talk about her fiancé. Fortunately, he had managed to speak perfectly even though he was seething inside in mild irritation. He already realized that Narima would talk like that to anyone if he was mentioned cause his twin sister really did view him as an adventure-loving idiot. He was suppressing his irritation when he heard her mother laugh, and to his astonishment, so is the king. He knew why her mother laughed. She probably feel amused right now cause he depicted the attitude of his sister really well, even going as far as insulting himself, but he did not know why the king laughed as well. I did not realize you have a brother, Princess Narima, and an adventure seeker at that. I bet he always travel from one place to another. Maybe that's why I haven't heard anything about this brother of yours in the entire kingdom, and I was even amazed you describe your brother as an idiot. Ha ha ha. King Fugaku laughed, joining the soft laughter of his mother, and he inwardly growled in frustration. He mentally insulted the Uchiha king as he never want anyone to call him an idiot. Only his sister was allowed cause she uses it as a nickname to him and she often says it in a loving, fond manner. You old fart. Not only did you laugh at what I call myself, but you even have to say it with your loud voice that our kingdom has an heir. I can't believe this. You old coot. Now, my parents would be pestered constantly to reveal me and I would have to go through all the formality. Again. He knew he was being disrespectful in his head. Especially to a king that could very much be a threat to them, but he really can't help it. Perhaps if Naruto considers them as one of his family and if he trusts them completely, maybe he won't be feeling like this again. He snapped out of his thoughts when the king asked him, "Why isn't your brother here? And why is he not introduced in the Uzumaki kingdom? I find that rather strange, if you don't mind my asking," the Uchiha king asked while directing them inside. He was looking around the castle, not hiding the fact that he is incredibly interested at the designs he sees around the castle as they walk further. Even though his mother had tried to jab him, he still can't really take his eyes off the intricate designs of the castle. He told his mom in a whisper that he would just excuse his behavior later. Tell the king that she is examining the castle for her brother. He remembered King Fugaku's question and he answered what he knew his sister would say while at the same time speaking for his own answer inwardly. "I do mind." He sighed inwardly. "As I stated earlier, sir, he likes to travel everywhere as he likes beautiful things and fresh surroundings." He started, pushing his uncomfortable thoughts at the fact that he is telling a stranger something about himself, but he had to do it cause he knows his sister would, as she already sees the Uchihas as family. He also loves his freedom and he hates formalities, so he begged my parents to not announce to the whole kingdom that they have an heir. He finished saying, knowing that the king is forming some conclusion and would eventually say it to him in his own point of view, so he allowed his gaze to flick from one place to another, adoring the ancient vases his gaze catches. They were really beautiful. How come he never comes across such beautiful things in his travels? After a moment, King Fugaku spoke, "Is it okay with you? Sorry to say this, but I find it really strange. Why would he want that? Not telling your people about having a prince won't be good, I think. And if I were your brother's family, I would view it as if your brother is ashamed of having a family like you." He said absent-mindedly and walked further, taking the role of a guide, and was introducing the designs of the palace as the work of his youngest son, the latest creation, but they stopped when they noticed Narima, with C as really Naruto, stopped walking altogether and was looking at them with an odd expression. "Princess Narima, are you alright?" the king asked as he saw him. Is that what you really think, sir?" The princess of Uzumaki Kingdom asked quietly, but strangely, there's a wave of disturbing emotion the king sensed that confused him so much. "Excuse me?" But then, Narima's mother walked towards her quickly and gently rubbed the other's back soothingly. Mom, is that what you think?" she asked her mother, and the latter stared at her daughter in horror. This puzzled the Uchiha king very much. What is the princess talking about? Is this about his opinion on the latter's brother? If so, why is she reacting like it has been her whom they were talking about? He just shrugged off his thoughts and was about to walk towards them when the mother spoke. "Of course not, dear," and then the queen of the Uzumaki kingdom turned and narrowed his eyes towards the Uchiha king and started. "You have no idea what you've done, do you?" she said, and the king looked perplexed about the queen's reaction. He could feel the suppressed anger coming out of her body and he became stiff. "How dare her to act like this in my kingdom? She has no right. This isn't her territory." He was about to speak when she continued on talking to him while rubbing the back of her obviously distraught daughter. Naruto's mother, Kushina, can clearly see that she needed to explain why her supposed daughter is very much disturbed right now when she should not be acting like this now. But unfortunately, Narima is really Naruto, so of course Naruto would be distraught. If there is anything more he loves other than his freedom and adventures, it is them, his family. She was really angry that she didn't notice she had spoken disrespectfully to the king of the Uchiha kingdom within his own territory. She needed some explanation to excuse her and her daughter's reaction. She racked her brain to give some excusable answer so they won't be in trouble. Then, she remembered the connection her twins have and she explained immediately in clipped tones while still soothing her distraught son. "Our son is not ashamed of us. He's doing it to prepare himself because he hates facing people who will undoubtedly attempt to get close to him just because of his status. He is very adept to people's emotion, so he despises feeling negative emotion. And for future preferences, I do hope you'll watch what you say, Your Highness," she said, but when she saw some questions running at the king's eyes, she continued, "They are twins. A special case. She can feel what her other would feel in the future." She finished as if stating the topic is finished and has given enough answers. The king looked shocked. He looked stiff while watching the two ladies walk towards the garden and sat on the bench, the mother consoling her daughter. A sibling bond, a very rare bond that was said to be a myth, but now, he was seeing one. Even if the Uzumakis didn't say, it was obvious. Their twins share a sibling bond. The two are receptive to each other's emotion, not to mention the other perceives the emotion of the others around him. An empathic twin. And a very powerful empathic ability at that if he would base his observation on the princess of Uzumaki Kingdom. Because he knew, just like all the people knows, that the sibling bond is more powerful on the youngest twin. And if Princess Narima is already acting like this, then his twin brother would have been twice more receptive as Princess Narima is the eldest of the twin. Naruto, we do not think like that at all. Naruto's mother said soothingly. After that outburst, Naruto's mother made him to sit on the bench at the garden of the Uchiha castle. What his mother said was true. He was actually very receptive of others' feelings that sometimes, he just can't take it. The emotions that surrounded him once when he was dressing up as a masked prince during his and her sister's 5th birthday one time was very heavy with negative emotions that he became so sick the day after. That was the day he realized that he isn't just an ordinary empath, but a powerful one at that if he was able to detect the negative emotions from the guest when those emotions were firmly locked up as he felt some barriers on the guest's emotion. Only a handful of people came who held a positive emotion that he just can't take it. The bond's abilities are stronger on him as he is the youngest of them. He didn't know why and his parents also didn't know. They only said that that was a belief they knew. Because he didn't want to be a burden to his parents anymore by becoming sick every time there is a gathering. He practiced to close off his receptiveness to others and that succeeded with the help of his twin sister, albeit with great effort. After that, he asked his parents to not tell the kingdom they had a son and tell them that the boy they saw at the gathering were the princess's cousin. He just needs time to get accustomed to his receptiveness and to manipulate it to bend to his will before he revealed his existence to the entire kingdom. He didn't fancy encountering that experience again after all. He was only 5 years old that time, so of course his empathic ability has matured and become stronger as he grows up. Luckily, he had managed to control it. He was still being consoled by his mother and was still thinking when a voice broke out inside his head. Well, more like an overwhelming concern and anger weaved inside him and they somehow formed some words in him. What happened, Naruto? Why are you distraught? Tell me. I'll kill the bastard who made you. His sister's emotions keep on pouring and he knew she must have felt his distraught 10 times than what he felt as Narima is receptive to his feelings in the future and his strong feelings in the present. He needed to make his sister stop. The sudden onslaught of her emotions is killing him. Gosh, when his sister is angry, her formalities are dropped to the 0 level. No, I'm fine. He managed to convey to her in soothing vibes of feeling and the surges of uncontrollable emotions she must have unconsciously sent him stopped slowly. He finally breathes in deeply and exhales sharply, then winced. He felt a pain inside his lungs. It must have been from his lack of air. Another emotion surged inside him and turned into words. I'm sorry for losing control over my emotions, Naru. It must have been painful to you. It was just because it was too awful and... It's okay, Nari. For my sake, why don't you come back early? 1 month is too long, you know. I said to her by giving out calm vibes of emotion and informative ones. Then she answered, yes, I'm already doing it now, dear brother. I will return right after the wedding. That's too long. Can't you make it in your wedding? I can't. I've been trying but I can't. That is the earliest time I can come. She said while also sending out sorry vibes and earnest ones. What have you been doing there? Why would it take too long to sort the problem out? Is uncle making it difficult? I swear. No, Naruto. It's not just the arranged marriage. There are some people in here who are rebelling. We need to know why. It's not like Gaara is not doing anything for his people. We think there are some outside force involved in this as the rebels looked like they didn't want to rebel. So you think the supposed rebels are being threatened by an enemy kingdom? Yes. We need to convince them that they are safe within the Suna kingdom. So far, they weren't listening. Then I should have been the one in there. Gaara would also listen to me. No offense, sis, but I think I can convince the people there, especially the rebels. I personally know almost all the people of the Suna. Naruto clearly said in the emotions he was sending. He felt his sister's emotion hesitate and he felt suspicious. Is something the matter? No, nothing. Don't worry, I'll definitely come back right after the wedding. She said. There was a pled in her emotion that Naruto stop trying to know what is wrong with Gaara. It was obvious Gaara has a problem that his friend didn't want him to know. What is it? Though he didn't really ask. He knew Narima wouldn't tell. He pouted inwardly and answered. Alright, he said while clearly giving an emotion of determination that he wanted to know what is happening with his friend. But I hate being you right now, you know. You are so formal, he said by sending out pouting and sulking vibes, and a very pleasured feeling enveloped him that made his hurt earlier instantly felt better. Then their connection broke when he finally paid attention to his surroundings. He was lying on the grass garden in his sobbing mother's lap. He gazed and looked at her and he smiled serenely. He raised his hands and wiped the tears in his mother's eyes that is trailing in her cheeks. Her mother stopped crying at once and fussed over him. Dear, are you okay? Anything. Geez woman, you're starting to sound like, nurse again. I'm fine, Naruto said in a tight voice because of his pain on his lung area earlier, momentarily forgetting that he's not Naruto now but Narima. Naruto became horrified, although his face didn't show any of what he really felt. A habit he had already practiced when he impersonates his sister. It's very effective. The king and the adolescent version of the king are looking down at him. The adolescent one checked for his pulse or any sign of injury while the king was apologizing profusely while rubbing his mother's hand. They were now looking at him, frowning probably because of his choice of words. You idiot, you're Narima, not Naruto. Would she tell her mother that? He asked himself almost hysterically. She looked at her mother to see what her reaction is to his words and saw that she is smiling happily. He sighed. At least he can still cover for this. Backed by his mom, of course. I'm terribly sorry for what you had heard from me and my mother's exchange. You see, we do it with my brother all the time to make her smile. We do not like to see her crying. It's not befitting of her status. Naruto said while sitting up, helped by his mother, making a mental note to tell to her sister to adapt his kind of talk when their mother is distressed so as not to give themselves away. Although I know it's very unlike me to speak such. No, it's fine, the adolescent one said. Now that Naruto's vision is clearing up and he is already properly seated on the bench, he looked closely at the adolescent one. He looked like his father. He has the serious face that clearly isn't messed up by frequent smiles. And his face matches his personality very much. This man is serious all the time. Even right now when he is checking him. Naruto's just glad he had woken up when this man is examining him. He can prevent the man to know his true identity. He does not have any chest after all. The adolescent man might suspect him if he got wind of it. The king must have seen his attention is focused on the man while wearing a curious expression, and King Fugaku spoke while frowning when Naruto looked at him. This is Itachi. Didn't you already meet? The king asked. Naruto noticed he was asking cautiously. Naruto panicked inwardly. Did they? Did his sister and this Itachi man really met up already? But before he could decide what he wanted to say, Itachi spoke. Father, I told you we didn't. I was too busy the first and second time Princess Narima visited. I only recognize her because Queen Kushina is with her this time again. Itachi said and announced that he has finished checking her. Then he asked if he could go to his lab and they nodded while smiling. I'll see you around Queen Kushina, Princess Narima. He said, and Naruto and her mother nodded. He then turned his attention to his father, probably asking silently, and the king nodded. Itachi then took off. The king returned his attention to them. I'm sorry about my son. He's really busy. He is the famous healer here in the Uchiha kingdom. He said, and they nodded. Now Naruto knows why Itachi was almost running earlier just to get in his lab after he was finished examining him. Most probably he saw him passed out earlier and he helped him when the prince was on his way to his lab. His train of thought was then cut by the king's apologies again. And I'm sorry for being insensitive earlier. I shouldn't have. It's okay, Your Highness, Naruto said when he remembered in time what his sister would have told the king of Uchiha while he inside was contradicting everything he was spouting. You definitely should. I should be the one apologizing for acting like that and passing out in your lawn like a person who had not eaten for days. Naruto continued what he was saying earlier while again contradicting his words. Why should I apologize? If he had been a bit sensitive, he would have known that what he said is rude. I want a blab. I hate Narima. Of course not. Both his mother and the king said at once, and Naruto, with the appearance of Narima, looked at the two politely amused while inwardly, he was cackling gleefully. He is still Naruto inside after all. Laughing gleefully is Naruto's own personal reaction. He saw his mother and the king looked at each other and they both chuckled. Naruto then suppressed the urge to laugh loudly as he is still Narima right now. His sister would never laugh in front of the leaders of the empire who is soon going to be merging. She's too formal when she's not angry. Again, Naruto whined about his sister's attitude. Why must you be so formal? This is not healthy. You would have become an old lady if not for this marriage. And to his surprise, an emotion not his own came into him at that time and words slowly formed. He thought he had closed off his connection to his sister, but he seemed wrong in his assumption. I won't be an old lady, Naruto. Take that back. Your words are like a jinx. They come true. Take that back. His sister had passed to him, and because he can't take it anymore, he laughed without care about the two leaders in front of him. He wiped the tears of mirth in his eyes. When he was finished and was only chuckling some more, he looked in front of him and saw the two looking at him weirdly. He wanted to explain to his mother and he could phrase it without giving out his true identity. But if he told that his connection with his sister opened in front of the Uchiha king, he didn't know if that is wise. Understanding dawned upon the king's features and his mouth turned into a shape. Oh. You can also speak with your brother? The king said, and he and his mother became instantly alarmed. How? Naruto was cut off by his mother's sharp voice. What are you talking about, your highness? My son isn't here. How could they speak with each other? Naruto looked at his mother's fierce expression to the king's odd and concerned ones. I already know when you told me earlier why Princess Narima is visibly distraught when I spoke about her brother Queen Kushina. And you need not worry, the king raised his voice slightly at his last sentence. The king probably understands why his mother suddenly looked like she would spit fire. Her mother is worried about the king knowing the Uzumaki secret. The other enemy kingdom would have kidnapped the Uzumaki twins if they knew about the siblings' bond. There are many uses for the ability of having the myth bond, and people would have done anything just to get their hands on the twins who has the bond. I won't do anything with them. Princess Narima is soon to be married to my youngest son. I won't let anything happen to her, Queen Kushina. The king said, and Naruto found himself speaking without even registering to his still fuzzled mind that he is already speaking. Youngest? He asked, and he belatedly realized he had asked a stupid question. This youngest son is Narima's fiancé. And as he is Narima right now temporarily, he should have known. Why did he even ask? He might as well divulge his own identity. He decided to speak again to cover his mistake. But before he could, a voice suddenly broke out. A very familiar voice, in fact, that he stared at the figure closing in on them with his eyes slightly wide. Did you forget about me already, Narima? The man said, and Naruto stood up abruptly and stared at the man in shock. Sasuke, Naruto breathed out, still staring at the man that was already in front of him unbelievingly. The man stopped at his tracks and looked at him with wide eyes, as if he recognized him as Naruto, and not as Narima. Before Sasuke shook his head slightly, that was probably only discernible to him as it was done with as limited movement as possible before he looked at his father, the king. Did something happen to my fiancé? Narima never act like this in front of me, and she never will. Sasuke said, and that snapped Naruto out of his stupor. He looked at his mother at the corner of his eyes and he saw her pursed her mouth in worry. He slapped himself inwardly. You idiot, you are Narima right now, nah. Ma, not Naruto. How many times will you forget? You have already compromised yourself for far too many times for comfort. Don't make your situation worse than it already is. He berated to himself before answering Sasuke's question. I'm sorry, Sasuke, Naruto immediately said, having difficulty in speaking out Sasuke's name in his neutral voice laced with fondness and familiarity that his sister would surely use. He remembered his sister saying to him that she liked her fiancé. He really wanted to spat out the young prince's name. If he was Naruto right now, he might have done it already. Damn his status as the prince of Uzumaki Kingdom. I passed out earlier. My mind is still in a fuzzy state, he said, managing to correct his mistake earlier. Sasuke, the bloody prince of the Uchiha Kingdom, immediately touched him and guided him back to the bench while he himself sat at the side. Naruto's mother stood up to give the young prince her part in the small bench. He spoke, voice sounding very concerned. Why? What happened? You never pass out. There must have a reason. Sasuke said, and Naruto looked around just to see that the king and his mother are gone, leaving them alone in the garden. Mom left me. Naruto returned his attention to the Uchiha prince uncertainly while inside, he is already panicking. What should I say? Should I tell him the truth? Did Narima told him about the connection? Just when that thought passed, Naruto felt horrified inside, though thankfully he managed not to convey in his face what he really feel. Or did my beloved sister told Sasuke about me? No, she wouldn't have. He didn't speak for a while, still glancing around once in a while, and while panicking, he also forced himself to not lash out at the touch of the prince. Though he would have loved to do it. Beating Sasuke to death would probably make him breathe much easier. Sasuke spoke, or more appropriately, whispered, so Naruto focused his attention on the Uchiha prince, throwing all his thoughts at the back of his mind. Is this about the bond you and your twin has? Naruto nodded slowly in slight shock while also suppressing the urge to shiver as Sasuke's hot breath caressed his ear. Focus. He shook his head to concentrate on the situation he is now. Now he knew his sister told her fiancé about their bond. He was trying hard not to shiver or to jerk or do any startled reaction if Sasuke moved towards him or touch him with familiarity, as he knew his sister won't be doing any of those. Narima never had any problem with close proximity if the person closing in on her never or wouldn't have any ill intention. And he knew Sasuke's attitude perfectly well, unfortunately, to know that the raven-haired man wouldn't do anything to him, well, at least to his sister. He erased that ugly thought immediately and with much mental contemplation, replaced the him he referred to himself earlier to her. He decided at that instant to lock away Naruto's own feelings, self and reactions, and to act and think and feel like his sister. He should do that if he wanted to get out of the Uchiha kingdom unharmed. If his true identity is revealed, he didn't know which happening is worse, the Uchiha kingdom executing him and his mother and making the Uzumaki kingdom an enemy, or Sasuke knowing his true identity as Naruto, the man he encountered and knew 7 years ago. So if he wouldn't temporarily be Narima, he didn't know if he could last 3 weeks without harming or insulting the Uchiha prince. Because the moment he saw Sasuke, he had wanted to hurt him that he wouldn't even remember his own identity. Better lie to himself at the moment than compromise his people and own future. His true impersonation and acting starts now. She spoke in a mildly curious way. How you know? Narima said. He saw Sasuke grinned slightly at her. You always act agitated whenever you aren't sure if talking about that in a public place is good or not. Narima nodded and looked around her again gracefully before speaking. You are right, Sasuke. It is about my brother. Your father said something about him and I felt his distress in the future if ever he hears it. She heard her fiancé sigh and she turned to look at him when he spoke. I'm sorry about my father, Narima. You do not need to worry about such things, Sasuke, it is okay. And your father already knows about this. He figured it out when my mother let something slip. She said with a finality in her voice that Sasuke didn't ask for the details. Even if Narima is his fiancé, he wouldn't force her to tell him her secrets. Though he can't help but comment about something Narima said. But I do worry about you, especially now that you are going to be my wife. Sasuke said, looking at Narima with serious eyes. Narima looked at him with an odd look in her eyes before he saw her smile. Sasuke's breath was caught at the back of his throat when he saw that smile. It reminded him of something from his past that had always made his heart melt. That wide and open smile directed at him made him smile softly back. For Naruto, when he heard Sasuke said those words with his eyes looking at his Narima persona, cannot help but emerged out of his locked state. He stared at him with a hurt expression, though he tried desperately to cover it so the Uchiha prince won't be able to see it, before he realized that Sasuke meant what he said. He smiled widely and openly, not noticing Sasuke's hitched breath as he was focused on the grateful emotion he felt in his heart, along with his hurt. Sasuke might not have any care for him at all, but at least he now knew and is fairly certain that the man would not hurt his beloved sister. After some time, Sasuke decided to ask the very question that has been nagging him for the previous times Narima visited. Why won't you tell me who your brother is? You know I won't tell anyone, right? Naruto, still not having hidden himself away, felt relieved. At least Narima still remembered her vow not to tell anyone who he is. He then locked himself again and became Narima before speaking. He did not want me to let a single person know. He wanted it to be him who would announce his existence. He said it is his duty for taking the knowledge away from our people who should have known about him. That's why I gave him my word not tell a soul about it. As a prince, surely you would know. Yes, he's a good prince. He'll do brilliantly, Sasuke said, and Narima smiled at him, grateful that he can say such things to her brother. The locked-up Naruto suddenly became angry and tried to surface once more and yell at the prince's face, but fortunately, he was suppressed by his own twin persona. He grumbled, but contented himself with the knowledge that after the 3 weeks of hell is over, he can go on an angry rampage in a faraway place. He felt a surge of worry swept into him and knew instantly that his true twin sister must have felt his future anger. He managed to give his sister a message clearly stating that he is Narima right now and wouldn't become Naruto for 3 weeks before cutting off the connection. He did not need to explain. His sister knew exactly what that meant, as his sister already saw his impersonation as Narima. His persona and locked-up Naruto sighed inwardly together. This is only the first day. What will happen for 3 weeks? He just hopes he would survive without the members of the Uchiha kingdom suspecting him about his true identity. The days after that first day were surprisingly fine. There were a few close calls and a few suspicions about him because of the information he didn't know that the true Narima certainly should have known. He managed to evade all of that because of Sasuke. Naruto always made the excuse about the continued appearance of the bond to Sasuke, and he would understand. Sasuke even said not to explain anymore, as he already saw her act like this the first time she visited. Naruto had wondered when that was since Sasuke said it. It was certain Sasuke was talking about an experience Narima had about her feeling Naruto's pain for the future. Narima, his sister, tends to act forgetful and lost when she feels his feelings in the future. Who wouldn't? Naruto's sister can feel his pain, the intensity of it in the upcoming future. That is one of the abilities his sister had in their bond that is definitely strong and is definitely weak on him. Sometimes also, to Naruto's panic, Sasuke would ask questions about Narima's brother that he didn't even know if his sister told her fiancé about him. Because there are some information Sasuke knew about him as Naruto and not the Prince Naruto, that only Narima knows, and of course, Sasuke. He was just glad Sasuke didn't connect all he knew about Narima's brother to Naruto that he had met 7 years ago, though that was surprising as Sasuke had always been sharp on connecting clues. Just thinking about that particular memory makes him so mad that he had to lock himself deeper than before so he wouldn't lash out at his anger and frustration. The wedding is taking place an hour from now and he was anxious for the event. Naruto finally surfaced that very day after his decision to lock himself up and release his Narima persona, as it was the day his persona will be married to the prince of the Uchiha kingdom and the very same day his sister, the true Narima, will come. Naruto did not want to think that the Narima persona that would eventually marry the Uchiha prince is him. That would just give him nightmares. If he had just contemplated about it, he would have made the wedding completely without any hassle in the future. Too bad his luck ran out. During the morning he had woken up, he had opened the connection he had with his sister and talked their plan through it. They had agreed that they would meet after the wedding and change. They would just discuss earlier using their bond where they would do it. Naruto's already done with his persona Narumi makeup. He had requested that he choose his own makeup artist and chose Arabella, his sister's makeup artist, to do it. After Arabella was done with him, he gave her a specific instruction that the same makeup she had applied on him should be on his sister also. Arabella knew about his existence and true position at the kingdom and also the situation about him replacing his sister for the wedding, so she had agreed. Through the bond also, he knew Narima is being done right now. At times like this, he's thankful for the bond. He can clearly see its usefulness. Though he felt that Narima is being difficult about making the makeup. The wedding dress is hanging at the hanger at the clothes stand. Naruto looked at it with pure disgust. He would wear this later? He knew it is pretty, and it would be gorgeous for the bride. But he is a guy. No one can really blame him if he looked at the wedding dress like that. Thankfully, no one is in the room that moment as he asked the attendants attending to him to leave him alone for a few minutes. To calm down. He changed his facial expression to calm and collected one, the one he knew his sister would wear when the door opened. He saw his mother enter and close the door. He breathed and sighed heavily before morphing his face into an expression of grimace and disgust. He would have congratulated himself for doing both of the expression if not for the fact that he is feeling miserable at this whole event. His mother laughed at him and embraced him. "You did very well, dear. There were a few close slips, but you managed to evade all the close calls," she said. Naruto hugged her also before pulling away to look at her mother's face and said, "I thought you're here to congratulate me about my wedding?" His mother laughed while pulling away. "I wanted to, but based on your expression earlier when I entered, I didn't think you would appreciate it," she said after a while, and Naruto smiled brightly with a relieved release of breath. "Thank you, mother. I'm sick of hearing that congratulations thing. This is not my wedding. I could have died of frustration here," Naruto exclaimed. He caught sight of himself in the mirror and he scowled at his reflection. "I look like a bloody woman." "Naruto, your words. And you do not need to worry, as your sister will arrive at 5 o'clock. Then, you can replace each other," his mother said, and he was instantly reminded of his own worries. "That's right, Mom. Narima will be here an hour after the wedding. After, we couldn't have that." "Well, I wouldn't have that. I won't know how I will distract his husband after the wedding. I don't even know what will happen after the wedding. And there is the reception. You can't expect me to kiss him in front of many people. Ew, once is enough already." And he made an expression of disgust. Naruto wouldn't really feel disgusted at the act of kissing Sasuke. He knew he would feel right, which was really disturbing him more than anything else. "Naruto." Queen Kushina admonished her son for her words, but Naruto didn't even acknowledge them as he continued. "Please, Mom, she should be here by 4. Naruto said, and his mother looked at him confusedly. "What should I do? I can't do anything about that. The fastest time of travel she can do is 1 hour after the time she finishes her work there. Narima said she could go at 4. I don't know why she decided to finish at that time when she was already being done with her makeup right now. I could never understand your sister sometimes," Naruto's mother said while shaking her head, then asked, "How could she get in here faster than her should be initial time? Let her use her ability to come to me, Mom. Please. She never uses it because she can't sense me. I had closed off her ability to sense me because you asked, but please, just now. This is definitely a must. Please, Mom, Mother dearest?" Naruto pleaded, adding endearments at his words. Her mother looked at him for a while. After a minute of silence, she nodded. "Yes," Naruto exclaimed and jumped, his fist in the air before jumping at his mother to hug her. Because of his abrupt jump, they stumbled backwards. Thankfully, they fell on Narima's supposed bed that he now occupies. Her mother scolded him, but he still hugged her, and she in turn hugged him back. That's the position Itachi had stumbled upon when he opened the door in the room. When he saw the scene, he slightly closed the door and spoke. "I'm sorry for disturbing you, Queen Kushina and Princess Narima. The wedding is going to take place after 30 minutes. Hurry up," Itachi said. Naruto reverted back to being Narima before calling out to say he'll be ready. The door closed and his mother stood up on the bed after him before making sure the door is closed, and she locked it. They can't have anyone knowing their secret when they are so close to the end. "Come on, honey, let's get you dressed." Naruto was having a hard time wearing the dress. It was absolutely a hassle. Why women would want to wear it he will never know. He preferred comfortable clothes than this tight-fitting one where you were almost exposing your skin. He was just glad that he was the one to decide which wedding dress he would like than the palace's attendants. From what they were telling him earlier, they wanted him to wear something more revealing than what he chose. Goodness, his was already revealing enough, thank you very much. And he was happy for once that his twin sister likes her clothes simple and that do not reveal much skin. His mother had helped him wear it, and no one else was allowed in his room because he had requested it. If the attendants would attend to him, they would know that he is a man, and they would definitely be dead before they could even get out of the room. The attendants are from the Uchiha kingdom after all. When all was okay, he asked his mom to wait for him outside and to tell the people who kept on calling him to wait for a minute. His mother nodded and in a second was gone. He communicated with his sister through the bond and told her that the moment she can sense him, she must use her own ability to jump at his space. He did not need to convince her to do it, as she had excitedly agreed. She didn't even know the time he would allow his sister to sense him. Naruto can't really blame her. She had only used that particular ability twice. The first time is when he was lost during their childhood days, and the next is when she dragged him and persuaded him to stay at the kingdom. Both times he unconsciously allowed the connection to spread in his body that his exact location was found. Naruto was beginning to feel really nervous that he can feel his entire body become stiff. If not for the reassuring hand and occasional hug his mother is giving him, he would have fled out of the church. Even the intricately designed building didn't deter him from his nervousness, a very rare occurrence. Even though this wasn't his wedding, he still feels like this is his wedding. And the thought is disturbing him more than earlier. Why did he have to remember that the Narima that is going to marry right now is him? He was panicking already inside, so he took a deep breath and violently threw the thought out of his mind. When it still did not stop, he mentally stomped it with his feet and wished it to disappear. That surprisingly worked. Maybe because the thought of him stomping a thought mentally seems comical and made him feel like he was turning insane. Not surprising seeing this event. This is it, he suddenly said mentally when that thought passed his mind. It never really occurred to him earlier, and also for the past weeks being with Sasuke as Narima, that the man will be married to him. No, to his sister. He would be free. After this event, he won't be able to see Sasuke ever again. He won't be able to see the bastard's face ever again. And even if he did, there would be nothing. Because Sasuke is already tied to another person. When that last thought occurred, he unexpectedly felt a stab of pain inside his chest instead of the overwhelming joy he had half expected, and he resisted the urge to clench his hands on his chest where his heart is currently beating fast. Shit, why do I still feel something for the bastard who literally made my heart shatter into a million pieces? I thought it was gone? I thought I'm over it? The thought of Sasuke being a married man only sank in and occurred to him right now. And he can feel his chest wanting to burst out. The sudden realization made his whole world stop. He realized then and there that he still loves the raven-haired bastard. The youngest prince of the Uchiha kingdom. The fiancé of his twin sister. Very much. And he realized with a painful jolt of start that it had never wavered a bit. It only became stronger as years have passed. Because he had never faced it, he only evaded all of it. Naruto felt his eyes sting and recognized instantly the beginnings of his tears. Before it fell, however, he hid his true self, and his Narumi persona resurfaced. Just as the silent tears fell, Narumi persona came out of him. She felt tears trailed down her cheeks and she frowned. Why are there tears? She wiped it from his cheeks and the action was caught by her mother. What's wrong, dear? Her mother asked concernedly, seeing that her son dressed as her daughter was wiping tears on his cheeks. Nothing, mother, Narumi said, and she squeezed the hand of her mother to reassure her. Just then, a trumpet sounded all throughout the kingdom, signaling the start of the wedding. Narumi and her mother waited for all the people needed to walk to finish walking to the aisle. When it was her and her mother's time to walk, she breathed deeply and started to walk with her mother on the side. Inwardly, the lock-up Naruto silently watched the entire event. From the first trumpet that signals the start of the wedding down to the time where the two newlywed couple kissed, sealing the couple bond the two have. Narumi and Sasuke Uchiha walked out of the aisle down to the carriage that will bring them to the place where the reception will start. While at the carriage, Narima and Sasuke talked about their honeymoon, to a place where they will spend their entire month to really acquaint and establish their time being husband and wife. Inwardly, Naruto wept as he listened to their conversation. 3 years later, after the eventful wedding and merging of the Uzumaki and Uchiha kingdom, the two kingdoms had become closer than ever before. The wedding was a total success. Naruto had successfully managed to get away from Uchiha Prince by exchanging his place with his twin sister, Narima, once when he asked to use the toilet. There, Narima jumped to his space. After giving him his clothes and after kissing him with thanks, she took off to replace him. For 3 years, Naruto tried his hardest to bend his abilities he got from the bond so that he won't live in secrecy. All his breakdowns and angry outbursts were dealt with, and he had managed to control all his abilities, the simple and dangerous ones. It wasn't easy, and many times he had felt like he would rather die than have the ability he had. His twin sister helped him at those times and encourages him not to lose to his own self. Certainly, they never met. Naruto wouldn't allow it, not that he would, considering his twin is married to the person he never wanted to see ever again. Sasuke is the first person he had ever loved deeply and had allowed to walk into a path he had laid out in his heart. Aside from his family, the very first person he had fully allowed to see his true side. And the very first person to ever destroy his heart. And until now, he still very much loves the Git. And that discovery only made Naruto hate him more. But with their unique and myth-rare bond, they can communicate with themselves, and as soon as his sister knew what he was up to, she gave out encouragements and had never left him. The overflowing concern and love he felt going through the bond helped him considerably. Now, their carriage arrived at the Uchiha kingdom once more and Naruto steeled himself. He reinforced his new ability to control his emotions as the carriage pulled into a stop and the coachman had opened the carriage so his mother, him and his father could visit his sister. Their visit this time do not only have the intention of visiting his sister, but also have the intention of introducing him to the Uchiha family officially. His sister said that the news of the Uzumaki kingdom having an heir already reached their ears, so the Uchihas knows about his existence. But that was it. They didn't know anything. They didn't even know his name, let alone his face, and Narima didn't let the knowledge out even when she was bugged constantly by the entire family. Narima told the Uchihas that the entire Uzumaki will visit so she could introduce her little brother perfectly to them. And his parents agreed. Naruto really didn't have any choice but to go. They left all the affairs to his uncle Genichi, Gaara's father and one of his father's closest friends. Naruto assured his parents that Uncle Genichi would be able to handle the affairs well and wouldn't try to deceive them. Uncle Genichi might not be blood related to them, but almost all the people blood related to them are not a very good candidate. He used his empathic ability full force and only focused it on the people his parents had suggested and learned that only Uncle Genichi, the candidate he chose, is trustworthy. The others are entirely not, to his distaste and dismay. He even learned that once they knew him and his sister have the sibling bond, they would betray the Uzumaki kingdom just for their own gain. Naruto is just glad his cousins isn't like their fathers or mothers. A blessing really. And Uncle Genichi might have been a bit manipulative when he managed the Suna kingdom when he was younger, but now, he just wanted to retire, and he also had the decency not to meddle in the affairs of the Uzumaki kingdom with only his own decision. Uzumaki kingdom is a lot more powerful than Suna after all, and he wasn't an expert in managing a huge kingdom. Luckily, his cousin, Princess Sakura of the Konoha kingdom, gave his father and Uncle Genichi an orb so they could communicate with one another. Sakura is into advanced magic technology and she could make things that are really complex and effective. Only he, Narima and Gaara knows her ability, so he told his father and uncle that the orb is a gift from a friend. They had decided to keep Sakura's talent to themselves as they know that enemy kingdoms would definitely do everything to acquire the talent Sakura has to improve their military power and take over powerful kingdoms like Uzumaki and Uchiha, just like they would do everything to acquire the people who have the myth bond. He remembered exactly what happened that day he decided to announce himself as the heir of Uzumaki kingdom, and he lost himself in the memories. *flashback*. The day he decided to go to his parents, he had confidently walked inside the Uzumaki castle with the intention of speaking to his mother and father. The royal guards had not permitted him to enter earlier, so instead, he asked them to tell the king that he wants to see them, which they did. However, they were certain the king won't allow his presence inside, so they were surprised when their ruler became ecstatic to hear his arrival and had snapped at the head of the royal guard. When he was walking towards the quarters of the king and queens, he earned some curious looks from the people inside. He just smiled at them, and to his amazement, the ladies inside were blushing at him and was spluttering, and the gentlemen's had such a look of jealousy in them. Naruto shook his head. They didn't even know who he is yet, and he is getting such reactions from them. As Naruto wandered his attention to the castle, he can't help but feel some mild irritation seeping inside him. He had asked his father several times to allow him to be the one to redecorate the palace 3 years ago when the palace needed some repair, but his father had adamantly refused. It held such a conviction that Naruto found himself becoming upset with his father. That was also another reason why he withheld coming to the palace. When he reached the door to the ruler's quarters, he looked at the massive door. Of all the doors he saw in the Uzumaki palace, this massive door is his favorite. It had such beautiful carvings that he has trouble describing, and some unruly designs that had still kept its beauty that he always has trouble looking away from the door. He took a deep breath to slowly snap his thoughts into one thought: talking to his parents, before he knocked 3 times. A call came inside, so he opened the door and closed it silently. "Put it on the table please, and call me if our guest is already here." His father spoke without even looking at where he is, and Naruto suppressed the urge to laugh. Instead, he spoke. "Is there anything else you would like, Your Highness? I could drag your attention away from the queen and look at the door if you'd like." Naruto said in a tone that suggests he was highly amused. His parents spun around abruptly and looked gobsmacked at him. He tried, he really did, but in the end, the hilarious scowl his mother adopted and the cold angry look his father had that was abruptly cut off by a surprised look undid his control and he laughed hysterically. It was really rare he caught both of his parents off guard and he had always savored the event every time he really did it. "Son, why'd you do that? I was really angry about that, you know." Naruto's father, King Minato Uzumaki, exclaimed while rushing to his side the same time as his mother did. They embraced him in a very tight hug that left him feeling like he could use some fresh air. He could practically taste the feelings his parents had for him at that moment as he allowed his barriers for his empathic ability to lower down into a degree where he won't suffocate from the feeling. The close proximity made the emotions intensified. Overflowing relief, joy, love and ecstasy are around his parents that tears rolled down his cheek silently. With a joyous laugh, he threw himself at both of his parents. He missed them, he truly did. After that heartwarming reunion, with some lecture from his mother and words from his father, "Do not leave us again without any communication, young man. Understand?" They asked him what his business really is. He wanted to drag it out, but the look of excitement from his parents made him relent. For half a year, he was separated from his family without any contact at all, and that's the longest time he hadn't had any communication with his family. His parents were eager for anything he would say and any news from him, so he gave them, turning serious once he answered their question. "I decided to reveal my existence to our people, Mom, Dad," Naruto said. The instant his words left his mouth, his parents only looked at him. If they hadn't blinked occasionally, he would have thought his parents had become frozen. After a full minute of silence, he asked just to fill in the uncomfortable silence. "Well?" His parents became frantic immediately. What? How? Why? What happened? What's the reason? Why'd you? "Mom, Dad, shut up and let me answer." Naruto screamed at them and they instantly complied, looking at him with a still frantic gaze that he sighed. He can clearly read what was in their mind without using his empathy ability. They are probably wondering what made him decide. He answered their questions without really telling his reason why. 2 days after that, all the preparations were ready for him to announce his existence. When he did announced himself to be the heir of the Uzumaki kingdom, twin of the princess of the kingdom, there was a stunned silence. All of the people of the kingdom was looking at him in astonishment and Naruto felt his cheeks heated up slightly. The ordinary people he had always encountered, the children he sometimes played with his childlike attitude, the vendors he sometimes joke around with and sometimes he get discounts with the products they sell were hanging their mouths wide open. Even the soldiers of the kingdom, the royal guards that had toyed with him, the people serving for them were also very surprised. When he took a glance from his parents, both were looking very worried at the reaction their people had. Naruto gulped in nervousness. Before he could speak, however, the ordinary citizens that he had encountered daily had started shouting and clapping at him in awe and encouragement, and all the people of the kingdom clapped harder. A show of respect shone in their eyes and he knew that it was an act of acceptance that he had cried out his earlier dread and earned him laughs. He even heard his parents laugh also. And that was the signal of his good life. Flashback end. And at this moment, Naruto took back the comment he had after that day his existence was announced. He hadn't counted this day. The day he and Sasuke would officially meet with his entire family. Before he could do anything or say anything, there was a crack in the surroundings that had his parents alert and the royal guards to be on guard. The instant the crack was heard, he knew instantly what is happening. "Don't lash out, it's my sister," Naruto told the guard and they instantly relaxed, but not to the point where they would be caught off guard. They trusted the prince. At first, they really didn't. Who would? They only learned recently that they have a prince to protect and they are wary. Apparently, the prince had become fed up from their wariness around him. They didn't know how the prince even picked that up when they knew for certain they concealed their true emotions perfectly, and had snapped. To everyone's astonishment, he challenged the captain of the royal guard, Lon, in a duel while threatening to not hold back or he would tell the king and queen exactly what they thought about him. If they didn't know how their rulers would react, they would have brushed the threat, but they knew perfectly what they will do. The very important thing they learned about their rulers is that they value their family very much, and even one slighting their family receives, they would receive the backlash 10 times worse than they did. To their astonishment, the prince defeated Lon after hours of combat and had finally trusted the man. And also, associating with Prince Naruto becomes frequently that they already know the attitude of their prince. The crack disappeared and Narima instantly materialized on his space. Their parents then hugged her before she looked at him. Naruto shifted a bit because of the intensity of her stare before Narima beamed at him and hugged him. If they weren't in a public place, Naruto was sure his twin would have bounced onto him and forget all of her formal attitude. She just loses that when Naruto is concerned. Narima just becomes like a child with him. Naruto hugged his twin just as tightly. Come on, Mom, Dad, Naruto. The Uchiha family are in the private dining room and is anxiously waiting for your arrival. Narima said informally after she broke the hug that only proved that she really is excited to have forgotten her formalities. She even dragged him to the part of the castle he had not ventured before when he was still impersonating his sister. You know, Nari, I really love you when you're like this. I love this laid-back version of you. Naruto said that earned him a laugh from both of his parents and a jab from his twin. He saw the amused look of the royal guards and he grinned widely, earning him another jab from Narima. Will you stop that? You'll incapacitate me before I was even introduced. Naruto hissed while rubbling the part of his stomach that received the jab. Do not worry, brother, they'll still recognize you if that were to happen. Narima answered dryly and his father burst out laughing, earning him a look from the Uchiha's servants. Their mother softly chided his father for laughing loudly. They talked while following Narima to wherever he was supposed to be introduced. He could feel his tension building up inside him and he pushed it all aside so he wouldn't be overwhelmed. Instead, he allowed himself to be distracted by the designs of the palace. It really is very beautiful. The castle is like speaking to him. He was suddenly snapped out of his thoughts by his sister's voice telling them they arrived and he had to calm himself when Narima opened the door to the private dining room. Surprisingly, he didn't need any more prompting to distract himself as the room itself is very distracting. How had he missed this room? It's so beautiful. He immediately walked toward the wall away from his family to caress it. One touch and he felt something awfully familiar about it that he really didn't know what. While Naruto happily lost himself to the wonders of the room, the two families inside just looked at him. His parents and Narumi looked at him in fondness and at the same time, embarrassment. They already know Naruto's tendency to ignore everything around him in favor of examining something that captures his attention. But could he just ignore the room just this once? The Uchihas only watched in slight puzzlement and humor at Naruto when the prince traced his hands on the wall as if he is caressing his lover. He had such a besotted look on his face that none of them had the nerve to take his attention away from the said wall. They were so into the unusual attitude of Naruto that none of them noticed the shock registering clearly on the face of the youngest Uchiha. So, this is the brother you spoke of, Narima? Your twin brother who would love to explore the Uchiha castle? A male voice sounding familiarly like the king of the Uchihas asked finally after a few minutes of silence, and Naruto snapped his attention to the family now standing on the table. His eyes widened in horror when he noticed he is snubbing the royals of the Uchiha kingdom, that he kept on bowing immediately and utter apologies which earned him a laugh from both families. Yes, father. This is Naruto. As I told you, he would love to explore the palace. Narumi said fondly. Naruto was glad he told Narumi what had happened when he had impersonated her to marry Sasuke. Naruto felt free talking like this with the Uchiha family, not having to conceal his true emotions. As you told, and now I believe you, the king said fondly. But I didn't think he would literally act on it. I thought he would only look with an eager face and nothing else. That would be a sin. Naruto exclaimed, momentarily forgetting that the person he is talking to is the king of the Uchiha kingdom. How could I only look at them? They're beautiful. If they won't be appreciated, they would lose their beauty. Naruto said those words so vehemently that Sasuke, to his horror, couldn't help but laugh. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, at least not yet. He was glad it was masked by the laugh of the others. Naruto huffed. Why can't they understand that not appreciating beauty literally would make the thing ugly? Who made your castle, sir? If you don't mind me asking? I would like to speak to him or her personally so I could ask how they made this castle. The place is calling onto me. It's like this castle is made especially for me. Naruto ended in a whisper, but the occupants inside the room heard it still. He became lost in his thoughts. He didn't even mind speaking formally, so he didn't see or heard what the room had said or did after that sentence. Sasuke, after hearing that from Naruto, gasped lightly, and he was glad no one noticed it. He didn't want to dwell on his already rumbled thoughts as he answered. Me. Everyone in the room snapped their attention at him, and even Naruto did. Then he saw Naruto's eyes widen in slight shock and disbelief that he unconsciously raised his hands. Luckily, he noticed it and immediately and discreetly put it down. When he returned his attention to Naruto, Sasuke saw that he was wearing a smile that seems genuine and thrilled, but he knew better. Naruto's eyes were looking angrily at him. There was such a furious pure hatred in those bright beautiful sapphire eyes he had come to love so much. The eyes of Naruto is different than his twin sister, as Narima never had her eyes so bright like her brother's. Then, a fleeting memory rolled in front of his mind. It was Narima sitting on the biggest tree of the Uchiha garden, a place which Narima likes the most when she reads. She looked at him and he saw Narima's eyes. So brilliantly bright sapphire eyes staring and smiling genuinely at him. Then in a jolt, he realized. Narima did look like Naruto those days, before they were married. Very much, except for the color of Narima's hair and her gender, and he was wondering why he hadn't noticed it before. Maybe he did and just shrugged it off as his imagination. Why is that? Why should their eyes look alike at that time when after the wedding, it didn't? He knows Naruto's eyes and would never mistake it for someone else, so he knew that Narima really did look Naruto at that time. He abruptly tossed the thought at back of his mind and jolted back into the present because of a question thrown at him by an androgynous voice that never fails to draw him in. What prompted you to make the castle like this? Naruto asked, his voice soft while his gaze is firmly fixed on the wall, still caressing it with his hands softly. Again, Sasuke realized that Naruto's voice sounded just like Narima during those 3 weeks. He's becoming confused by his thoughts that he just tossed that thought again at the back of his mind and promised to think upon it more at the privacy of his own room. No, his and Narima's room. He focused on the question Naruto gave. It is just my kind of design that I like. Sasuke answered, looking at Naruto intently. He didn't notice all the family members were looking at them. His entire focus was on Naruto and Naruto alone. A soft snort escaped from Naruto after that statement that didn't went unnoticed, no matter how inaudible it should have been. That the entire family looked dumbstruck at him. It wasn't just the soft snort that made them look like that at him, but the tinge of bitterness and disbelief that accompanied that small soft innocent snort. Because all the royalties inside the private dining room were looking at Naruto, they didn't notice how Sasuke's look of unwavering intense interest suddenly shifted to that of self-loathing and longingness. Sasuke was impatiently waiting inside the private dining room where he and the rest of the Uchiha family, the main family of course. Uchiha clan is rather large, were waiting for his wife to appear with her family. Sasuke hated waiting, despised it actually. But he would bear with it. He is a prince after all. And besides, his family are patiently waiting, so why wouldn't he? They had asked Narima multiple times about the twin brother of hers, which, if Narima were to say how the Uchihas asked her, she would more like correct the person who questioned to change the asked to pestered. Of course only to her family, but Narima remained tight-lipped about it and instead said that her family will arrive in the Uchiha kingdom to visit her with her brother in tow so that they would leave her alone. And now was that time. Honestly, Narima is too loyal whenever she promised something. And that is also something Sasuke liked and appreciated about her wife. And he's quite content now. Not completely, as he still sometimes found himself imagining his life with a certain someone. When Narima came with his family, he was shocked. But not with the same reason his family has with their also shocked faces. It was because of that person who made the royalties inside the room shocked. It was Naruto, his previous lover, the person he had rejected. And that person is the twin brother of his wife, Narima. And all the pieces of the puzzles fit together in his startled and disordered mind. The reason why he didn't rebel at the union between the Uchiha and Uzumaki kingdom through his and Uzumaki kingdom's princess in the first place was because that said princess looks incredibly alike but also incredibly different with Naruto, that he just contended and fooled himself that Narima is Naruto. He didn't really think about the gender. Because even though Narima is not the one he would have loved to be married with, she had the exact and perfect aura and sense around her that Naruto always carried that had never failed to content him. He should have known. He should have realized that the reason why Narima feels so like Naruto is because they are siblings. Twins. And they have the myth bond. That's why they felt the same, because they are the same. Sasuke feels stupid, incredibly stupid. Why hadn't he known? And that soft snort Naruto released while still softly caressing a part of the castle Sasuke had designed and instructed the builders and architects to make specifically made him feel bitter himself. He knew what that snort meant. He saw that unnoticeable trembling of Naruto's shoulder. He saw the slight stiffening in Naruto's hands. He knew what all that meant as he knew all about Naruto himself. He's furious to the point of strangling someone to death, and he only managed to not move in rage the way he wanted because of restraint. And restraint was never in Naruto's vocabulary, so the emotions were very clear to him. And also at the same time, he's weary and tired of feeling anger on him that he resigned to disbelief, and that is also one of his reasons why he hadn't flung in anger. Instantly, Sasuke's hands rose without him registering the fact that he is doing it as he has always done it to Naruto before. He suddenly allowed his halfway outstretched hands to drop in silent weakness when he remembered exactly what he did to Naruto, the only person he had ever loved, and engraved deeply inside his cold heart that it left some emotional scars deep inside when he abruptly and coldly broke up with him. And it made him loathe himself so much that he wanted to beat himself repeatedly if that was even possible, as he knew that he and he alone made the decision to break up with Naruto that way. No other third opinion, not even a second. Only he himself decided to do that stupidity. Though that memory was vague as he tried really hard to erase, or at the very least, seal at the back of his mind, the event of that very day. And it has been so many years that it wasn't that clear for him, though he still remembered that he had said hurtful things to him. And he now knew his reasons for wanting to break up with the person he had ever loved so much that day doesn't really make sense, not now anyway. And he suddenly realized, with a jolt of disbelief and unwelcome surprise, that in the very first place, he is the reason for his own suffering. Because he had never allowed himself to trust the blonde. That realization only brought him more pain than anything else, and Naruto's rage only made the pain 10 times worse. Naruto probably felt at that moment the looks he was receiving because he slightly cocked his head to look at the people inside the room with the better angle to look at them all. But that angle made Naruto's point of view be directly at him, and Sasuke saw Naruto's eyes widen in shock and in a second turn into an obvious rage and disbelief that the whole family probably saw. It took his family to look at him for him to know why Naruto's expression suddenly changed. His emotions had probably reflected on his face the way their eyes expressed deep confusion. He immediately schooled his face into the usual calm ones and addressed the people looking at him. "Something wrong?" Sasuke asked. He knew he shouldn't try to act like nothing happened, that nothing seems wrong, as the Uchiha and Uzumaki saw his expression a split second before he had closed off his face to reveal none of the turbulent emotions he is feeling, but he would. Maybe if he did that they would think that they were just imagining things. He took a quick glance at Narima and saw her frowning at him, and he knew instantly then that Narima wouldn't be fooled. Ah, yes, Narima. He should have known. Narima never told him the abilities of the myth bond she shares with her twin, but that doesn't mean he didn't know that Narima wouldn't be able to know, because she will. Narima is observant and she knows her twin well, so she must have seen the exchange of emotions between him and Naruto. Sasuke ignored everyone and focused his attention at Naruto, who was now straightening up. "I want to look around the palace, sis," Naruto said, and everyone turned to him. Sasuke saw Naruto put on a mask of his usual cheery self. A mask, Sasuke realized. And then, Naruto waved his hand at them and was gone in a second without even waiting for their reply. Narima took a glance at them, bowed and also took off, probably to catch up with her brother. She closed the door softly, but not before she shot him a look that clearly says they will talk later. He turned away from the door only to see the royalties inside the room, even his brother, who is usually not interested in anything but his healing affairs, looking at him curiously and questioningly. They fired questions at him all at the same time, forgetting their formalities in favor for their curiosity. Sasuke sighed. He didn't know what he should be feeling. So he settled with amusement, as he did not want his family members to notice his disbelief with himself. Naruto felt drained with rage. What was up with that look? What was up with him? Earlier, after he asked who made the castle and that bastard answered, he was shocked because he had forgotten that he is in a private dining room of the Uchiha kingdom where Sasuke is a prince. Then, he felt disbelief when he heard the answer. The beautiful castle that instantly hooked him was made by Sasuke? This castle that was drawing him in, calling him and making him feel like this was made for him was made by Sasuke? What the heck? And he made it because this is his kind of design? Is he fucking around with him? Naruto knew perfectly well that this type of design is not Sasuke's thing. He liked it, yes, but this is not the type of design he had originally liked. This type of design was Naruto's type. They had argued about this one time when they were still together. Sasuke described his type as a chaotic one and had no consistencies. They argued for hours until Sasuke admitted that although the design is chaotic just like he said, it is strangely fulfilling in the eyes and relaxing. Thinking about that particular memory made him feel anger beyond anything he had ever felt, especially when he remembered their breakup and those hurtful words Sasuke said. And he had the nerve to look at him like that now? Bloody fucking bastard. Naruto. Narima's voice reached his ears and he looked up just to see his sister running gracefully to him. Naruto rolled his eyes, temporarily forgetting his anger. He should have known his sister would follow him. Yes? Naruto asked once Narima is within his distance. They are in the garden now where he had passed out the first day he was here. Naruto was slightly surprised that he had wandered into this part of the castle without his knowledge. What is wrong? Narima asked and gestured for them to sit on the bench. He followed his sister's example and sat down. Nothing. He lied, trying to look at his sister's eyes innocently. But that obviously won't fool his sister as she frowned at him. Do not lie to me, brother. I saw that exchange you had with my husband earlier. What is happening? Did he do something wrong when you were, Narima said uncertainly. She can see that her brother do not want to talk to her about it and she wanted to respect his wishes and drop the subject. But she cannot. Earlier, she felt an overwhelming stinging pain inside her chest when Sasuke answered Naruto's question. It was with a great effort to remain unaffected by the pain she felt. And she realized instantly after that confusing exchange and the bizarre attitude his brother displayed that Naruto will feel emotional pain in the future concerning Sasuke. She wanted to know why, as the two people involved are close to her. She heard Naruto sigh softly as if saying that she's stubborn. Naruto, I wanted to know. You cannot expect me to butt out. Narima said and chuckled when she saw her brother ogling her in shock. You spoke blatantly informally, Narima. Naruto exclaimed wide-eyed and Narima laughed softly. She should have expected her brother to notice her speech changed direction instantly. Good for you, sis. Now, I didn't have to worry about you. Just do a little more practice and you'll be alright in the future. Naruto advised while giving his sister a pat on her shoulder. Narima slapped her hand playfully. I have noticed you have deterred our conversation away from my question. Not bad, but not good enough. Narima said knowingly and Naruto smiled sheepishly at her. Narima sighed. What really is wrong, Naruto? Come on, tell me. Naruto sighed this time. Narima won't back down, he knew it. If there is one thing similar between him and his twin sister aside from their looks, it is their stubbornness that they both got from both their parents. He can't exactly say the entire truth, but he might as well give the basics. I don't like him. You don't? Narima repeated for clarification and her twin nodded. Why? I just don't like him. Naruto repeated and he can see his twin sister isn't satisfied with his answer, but he stubbornly kept his mouth shut. The answer he gave was an understatement. He did not just dislike Narima's husband, he loathed him to the core. But he won't say it to his twin. Sasuke is Narima's husband after all. Though he gave a not so accurate answer, at least he still gave the general basic of his feelings for the raven-haired man. But this is just the first day, the first time you met him when you're like that. Naruto can clearly see that his twin didn't like referring his impersonation as anything that would clearly give them away. They are still being very careful about that piece of information. No one should ever know about that event. And you instantly say that you do not like him? I did not feel any resentment or negative feelings from him directed at you. And if you only open up a bit and reached for, Narima further explained, but she was cut off by her twin. That won't work because even if I do, I'd still feel the same way. And, here, Naruto raised his voice to stop his sister from speaking again. He can already hear her sister's words and he wanted her to stop. He didn't want to hear about it. He didn't want to hear her sister say that that kind of attitude is somewhat selfish because in his mind, it is not. It is very appropriate and justified. In the future, please refrain from talking about him in front of my present sister. Could you do that for me? I do not want to hear anything about your husband. Except if it mattered or I ever ask. Naruto said, reverting her tone and choice of words to match that of his sister. When Narima nodded reluctantly, he relaxed. He knew his sister understood him and respected his decision. He also knew that his sister got the message, that he is serious about his request. Whenever he spoke in a formal way towards his family, that only means that he is serious about his decision and wouldn't be swayed to consider otherwise. The twins reacquaint with each other after that, leaving the previous topic behind them. Though Naruto knew his sister wouldn't lay it to rest. She would question him again in the future, no doubt about it. Because, like he said earlier, Narima's sister is stubborn. And he can't exactly keep on requesting her to stop talking about Sasuke, seeing as the man is his sister's husband, forever, as long as they lived. Maybe in the future, it won't hurt to speak about the truth to his sister, but now, it still is. He's just glad he had put the topic to rest, even if it was only temporary. Because he and Narima were so into each other and the topic they are discussing, none of them noticed that someone was hiding in a dark corner of the garden, just 10 steps behind them, and therefore had heard their conversation. Itachi strode towards his brother's and wife's room with a purpose, calmly walking towards his destination. He is intent on talking to his brother, if only to satisfy his growing curiosity. Add to the fact that he also worried for his brother and confused at Naruto's behavior towards Sasuke. He had to know. He already looked for him everywhere, and a maid told him she saw Sasuke walk towards the couple's room, the only place he didn't even bother to look, much less think. He did not bother to knock as he really didn't feel the need to do it. Narima wasn't there, so surely, his brother would not mind him intruding. And even if he did, he'll just have to deal with it, he thought. He opened the door and closed it softly but firmly, drawing the attention of the man sitting on the edge of the bed with his hands unnaturally running through his raven hair. If Itachi had seen this particular attitude confusing, as Sasuke didn't have this habit in him before, he didn't reveal any of it, at least physically. Sasuke abruptly stood up when he saw his elder brother, looking alarmed at once. Itachi is never a person who walks into others' quarters even if his life depends on it. His brother is the type of person who still knocks on the door like nothing is happening even if the entire building collapses, so Sasuke figures that the situation might have been an extreme emergency to have his bizarre brother break his insane and redundant attitude of acting like, everything is normal and I'm happy. What is it? Something wrong? Sasuke asked frantically, though he remained stoic. He was about to head outside in worry when a hand gripped his elbow lightly to stop him from going further. He looked at his brother inquiringly. I just want to talk, his brother said while frowning slightly. Sasuke took a second to process what his brother had said in his frantic and chaotic mind. He had been thinking about different scenarios that could have broken his brother's insanely bizarre attitude. When he understood what Itachi had said, he stopped and stared at his brother dumbly. About you and Narima's twin brother, Naruto. Itachi explained further, seeing the blank look on his brother's face. He frowned, wondering why his little brother looked at him as if he had grown another head after that sentence. He was saved from questioning by his little brother's words. Bloody hell, Sasuke murmured while rolling his eyes away from his brother's face. Itachi moved his usually very still face by raising his eyebrows past his hairlines in puzzlement at Sasuke's words. That is the first time he had ever heard his little brother cursed. And he realized that it probably wasn't the first time he had done so, considering how familiar Sasuke had uttered the words. Itachi wondered when his little brother started to have that habit, as he certainly didn't have that kind of reactionary response when startled so many years ago. Sasuke walked away from his brother's grasp and headed towards the balcony of his room, looking at the view his balcony could provide him. He ran his slightly shaking hands through his hair, messing them up in the process. Sasuke didn't even mind that he was ruffling his hair that he so hated to be messed up. He just continued on doing it, pulling his hair slightly so he could feel the slight pain at the tug. Because Itachi was puzzled at the very unusual attitude his brother is doing, he asked while still standing at the closed door. What is the matter, Sasuke? You are acting very unusual today. Sasuke looked at his brother, facing him fully, looking at him with an odd expression on his face that Itachi frowned in clear puzzlement, an unusual expression on Itachi's very still face. It seems that I had been expressing more emotions now, more than I usually do, Itachi thought absently. You're the one who is unusual today, brother, Sasuke finally said, walking towards the edge of the king-sized bed and sat down. Itachi didn't ask permission to be seated. He just sat down at the chair on the bedside table. I'm not being unusual today, little brother. No? Not being unusual? Are you serious? Sasuke asked in astonishment. He cannot help but feel incredulous at his brother, that's why his words came out informally. I'm sorry about that, brother. Sasuke said immediately, seeing his brother's eyebrow rose again. I cannot help but say it like that. Surely, you know your own attitude. You would never have just entered other people's quarters even if there are attacks all over the kingdom. You would just knock like nothing is wrong. So what do you think is wrong with your attitude now? Oh, his big brother only said. Itachi realized the truthfulness of his brother's statement and he could only nod, knowing full well what his attitude is and what he is doing now that really was out of his usual one, though he failed to see what was wrong with it. And now that that was mentioned, he wondered why he felt the need to enter his little brother's quarters if what he really just wanted was to talk. He dismissed the thought from his mind, deeming it unimportant. Yes, brother, oh. Sasuke repeated his brother's words sarcastically. He sighed and shook his head before asking, what is so wrong that you felt the immediate need to barge in our quarters? Not that I mind, brother, but it is most unusual. I told you, I want to talk about you and Naruto. Itachi answered. He stood up and moved the chair he had occupied earlier towards the edge of the bed where his little brother is sitting and sat down again. He looked at Sasuke with unwavering gaze that Sasuke felt slightly uncomfortable. What about us? Sasuke asked his brother almost casually, though he still felt weary. And in a second, his mind provided him of a double meaning of the question he had asked. Yes, what about you and Naruto? You're married now. You won't be able to have him anymore. Sasuke shook his head violently, not really thinking that his brother would probably ask what is wrong to have him shake his head violently like that. He needed to erase that train of thought from his mind. It's making him dizzy and is making him feel confused at his own emotion again. What is wrong, Sasuke? You have done some very unusual things since you saw the Uzumaki prince. Itachi asked, worried about his little brother. Sasuke is a calm and collected prince of Uchiha. He might have had a bit of a temper and is somewhat cold, but that was never threatened by anything. This is only the first time he saw his brother looking so frazzled. Well, maybe not the first, as he also saw his brother in this state 7 years ago, though it probably was worse now than before as he can clearly see his brother struggling to control himself. Nothing for you to worry about, brother. But somehow, his mind was also talking to him. Yay, your brother had nothing to worry about your turbulent feelings for Naruto, but what about you? Again, he shook his head to erase that train of thought, though this time he did it with a slight movement. So, about me and Narima's twin? Did you do something to him? Itachi asked straight away, without even pausing to consider how he would phrase it. The question startled Sasuke and it was clearly stated on his face. He did not anticipate the question thrown at him, well, at least how it was phrased. He should not have been surprised. Itachi is a blunt person after all. But still, the way his brother phrased the question, did his brother knew about his previous relationship with Naruto? Whatever do you mean? He asked instead of answering. He saw his brother shot him a look and so he answered in what he called a safe one. This is the first time we saw each other, brother. How could I have done something to him? He said in a straight voice, though in the weird look his brother gave him, his face probably betrayed him. He's having trouble controlling his emotions right now. He said he hates you. Itachi spoke again and Sasuke closed his mouth abruptly. The answer to his question jerked him out of his thoughts. He knew Naruto hates him. But he didn't think he would vocally say it to his family, to a member of his family. After all, he tried to be civil with him inside the private dinner room earlier. Did he tell you that? Sasuke finally asked, trying to look casual as he was very aware his brother is looking for a reaction from him. No, Itachi answered, never wavering his look on him. But you said, he told his sister. I followed them when the entire family fired a question at you. You probably didn't notice that I left because you were busy answering them. I heard him speak to his sister. Narima was asking about the tense atmosphere about you and him. And I was wondering about that myself. Itachi thought. And he said he hates me? For some reason, Sasuke questioned in a way that made him sound as if he was choking on his words that Itachi frowned in concern. Sasuke seems to lose his composure whenever they are talking about the Uzumaki prince. Though concerned, he still answered his little brother's question. He didn't say he hates you. He said he just don't like you. Itachi said, and he continued speaking even when his little brother looked up to him with an odd look in his eyes that Itachi couldn't quite place. But his voice suggested a deeper meaning of the word, dislike. He seems to strangely feel a totally deeper degree of dislike that I would have passed as loathing. If what you said is true and this is only the first time you have seen each other, then why the special amount of dislike? I do not understand. Itachi was startled when Sasuke suddenly stood up and walked around the room like a very agitated man. Well, he probably was. Are you sure, brother? Maybe he only really feels dislike towards me. Maybe you are only imagining it. Maybe. Brother, you're babbling. The instant Itachi spoke those words, Sasuke shut up and looked at him. I am not just thinking about it, Sasuke. I heard it. I know how deep he had said it. There is a definite conviction in his voice that I could never mistake it. I often heard it in other patients I had who hates their sickness that I am familiar with it. Now, tell me, why are you looking so frantic? Nothing, brother. Do not worry about it. Sasuke quickly said. The quick answer probably agitated his brother more than his actions earlier because concern was written on his brother's face. He saw his brother was about to speak again, so he cut him off. I need to be alone, brother. Narima clearly gave me the look that says she'll speak to me after she has finished talking to her brother. I need a minute to think clearly. Itachi looked at his little brother. He cannot understand why he looks so frantic and on the verge of edginess and panic. Itachi never saw his brother like this before. Never. He cannot comprehend it, and Sasuke is clearly asking for some space. To think. To clear his own mind. Sasuke has never been like this. He has never admitted weakness to anyone. Not even his own family. But those words are clearly saying his mind cannot clearly think straight. That is a weakness for his brother. All right, he said. Itachi shook his head in confusion before walking towards the door. Brother. Sasuke's voice called him, and so he stopped. He looked behind him just to see his little brother looking at him with a haunted look on his face that Itachi became speechless in shock. He can clearly see his brother was not even bothering to mask his own emotions. Please, do not speak to anyone about what we talked about. Sasuke asked, and Itachi found himself nodding. He felt like he is looking at a 10-year-old troubled child that Sasuke was before. Do not worry, little brother. This conversation is just between us. Itachi said before he opened the door and closed it. He probably won't understand the emotions Sasuke is feeling as he didn't know what it is in the first place. Though he knew there is more between Sasuke and the Uzumaki prince. He will find out about it. He will. And he will help his brother in whatever it is he is feeling. Sasuke sighed when the door was finally closed and he was left alone in the room where he and Narima are sleeping. He needed the time alone to think. He didn't think he would be able to with his brother inside the room. His mind is currently in chaos and he needed to sort them out. He knew Naruto hated him, but not to the point where the hate could be traced in his voice. And that gave him hope that they might be able to fix their relationship, at least to being friends, as the Naruto he knew those distant 10 years ago was easily angered, and it's clearly all over his voice and actions. Did he really hate him so much to the point of loathing him? Sasuke laughed bitterly to himself. He was too naive. He was too hopeful to think that Naruto would be able to allow him to his life again when in the first place, he had been the one to end their relationship. And he was too stupid to even think that the Naruto 10 years ago will be the same as the Naruto in the present. People change, and after all this years, he can clearly see the difference. He can clearly see that there were major changes on the blonde, though there are still some that is still the same. What did he say that day again? He asked himself. I knew you only say you love me because of my money. His young voice rang through his head. It sounded almost immediately that he almost jumped in surprise. His eyes went wide when he heard his voice in his head. He tried to clear the voice as he knew it would be really horrible. The words alone terrified him. But the voice that provided him the memory 10 years in the past didn't stop. It seems his mind wanted to torment him. I should have known that ploy of being your first was a strategy to make me trust you. He shouted at his head to stop. He didn't want to remember. He had pushed the memory in the very back of his mind many years ago to be able to move on, but now they're coming back. The voice continued in his head, changing from time to time. You are too conceited sometimes, Sasuke. This time, the voice of Naruto 10 years ago rang through his head. And he stopped shouting in his head a bit to listen to the childish young voice of the blonde that he loved so much. Come on, you need to accept that my designs are brilliant. Hey Sasuke, give me a piggyback ride. Accept your mistake, idiot. He cannot help it, the voices keep on coming in his head. Naruto's childish voice, his irritated and persuasive tone. He started shouting mentally again for it to stop the memories pouring in his head. Even though he clutched his head and shook it for the voices and images to stop, it won't listen. It only stubbornly continued to provide him with his memories 10 years ago. He saw Naruto's pout, his anger, his irritation, his excitement, his smile. I love you, Sasuke. The loving and dedicated voice of Naruto rang through his head and his eyes began to go wide. He cannot stop it. It continued to torment him. At least I had my revenge. If being your first is your ploy for me to trust you, then you didn't really know me that much. No, stop. He continued the mantra in his head as he already knew what the next words are. But they didn't stop. They continued appearing and there was nothing Sasuke could do as his mind supplied him with the memory that ended his sweet happiness 10 years ago. Did you know that I only said I loved you because I wanted to be your first? I didn't know you were that easy. So, we're even. Stop, he shouted. And all the images, the flashes, the voices, stopped abruptly, finally giving him some space. But it was too late. His mind gave him the answer he wanted, and he realized that he really had been too naive to think Naruto didn't really loathe him. Because now he remembered everything that happened so vividly it was like it only happened yesterday and he knew that he broke up with Naruto in the worst possible way. And now he finally knew that the blonde really didn't deserve it. And for the first time after 10 long years, he cried. He cried his bleeding heart out. Utter disturbance and extreme avoidance is what occupied Naruto's time at the Uchiha castle. Barely 3 days have passed, but to Naruto, it felt like an eternity. He was constantly checking his back and everywhere he went just to make sure that he wouldn't be encountering a certain evil prince, in his opinion. And he had no thought of changing his perception anytime soon. He had been avoiding the youngest Uchiha prince like the plague. He was seen conversing with the king and queen of the royals of Uchiha, with the excellent and slightly aloof oldest prince, Uchiha Itachi, his family and some servants of the castle. He was even seen playing with the common people of the Uchiha kingdom with his bodyguard in tow. But he was never seen with Sasuke at all. And even if they are in the same room, the two would only talk formally and the tension around them was so thick and obvious one might think they already met before and the meeting wasn't really nice. Which really did hit the mark. And is also a total understatement, in Naruto's opinion. If only it were just that. But no one was able to find proof, so people who speculated about it just let it go. Sasuke for his part was very frustrated. He had been trying to talk to Naruto, but whenever he found him, others were around. People he really didn't like or want knowing about their past relationship as they really have no business about it. And whenever he did manage to catch Naruto alone and not surrounded with his bodyguard in the shadows, Naruto slips away with a few well-chosen words. His patience is quickly running thin. It's not as if he had a very long patience in the first place. But he knew that with Naruto, he needed to make his patience long. He was aware that his suffering wasn't able to make a dent on Naruto's and he had no right to complain. He brought it to himself and he should be able to take it. But man, he couldn't take it much longer. The Uzumakis only have a week to stay in the Uchiha kingdom and as days passed the time is also, and he knew he had no time to spare to visit the Uzumaki kingdom given his position as the youngest prince and an active leader of the kingdom's battalion. The royals seemed to even see and feel the tension between them. It was hard to miss really, especially Sasuke's attitude of wanting to talk to the Uzumaki prince and that said prince's obvious reluctance to talk. They could practically taste it. And if someone were to say that last sentence to Narima, she would have shook her head and would just comment that they had no idea what the taste of the tension is. The people who heard it just assumed that it was probably because the people involved were closest to her. The other is our husband and the other is her twin brother. They just had no idea. And now, Narima is on a mission. She may have agreed to Naruto's plea of not wanting to talk about any topic concerning her husband, she may have even respected her wishes. But this is completely ridiculous. This isn't simply about the impersonation. This was something else, and the constant pain she feels was distracting her to the point of almost losing her temper, which rarely happens in public. The pains she feels at almost any minute makes her believe that the tension wasn't just with her twin brother, but also with her husband. They knew something that the rest of them don't and was in no decision to share. But Narima intends to find out. Not just because Sasuke is her husband because, unfortunately and very guiltily in Narima's mind, her top priority is her twin brother. Above all else, the one she was most worried about is her twin brother. She found her brother at the top of the tower on the Uchiha castle. He was currently looking at the lands of the Uchihas peacefully. The view is breathtaking in the tower, especially at night, so it's no wonder Naruto is there. Narima hated breaking her twin brother's peaceful moment, but she had to do it. She had to know. She had to know what was going on between him and her husband. Naruto. Naruto froze, his peaceful smile slowly left from his face when he heard his twin sister's soft voice. So soft and gentle that it rivaled his mother's voice when she wanted them to speak about something he wouldn't like. And it was always the kind of voice Narima used when she wants to speak about something he hated to talk about. It was probably about Sasuke. Naruto sighed before turning around to look at his sister. Narima is looking at him apologetically yet determinedly that Naruto knew he wouldn't be able to stall the talk they're going to have. He sighed again before looking at the scenery of the Uchiha kingdom provided by the tower before he spoke. Narima. Naruto said diplomatically that made Narima wince despite of herself. Naruto is detaching himself from the eventual talk they would have. This is Naruto's political tone and manner. Narima knew she would have a very difficult evening when faced with that political persona. That persona Naruto recently made just annoys her. Just like Naruto is annoyed at her normal speaking of talking formally. Damn Naruto's ability to adapt to certain situations. But at least he can utilize it whenever he needed to. No matter, get down to business. I want to know what is happening between you and my husband. Narima immediately dropped the bomb, thinking it would get her brother off balance. Naruto was surprised at the blunt question, indeed, if the tick on his forehead was anything to go by, but he quickly came over it and answered in an objective tone. And why do you want to know? Naruto asked curiously. Narima hated Naruto's political persona. It just grated on her nerves. Especially when he tried to play everything innocent. Narima repeated the question in her mind before noticeably calming down. He is my husband Naruto. You are my twin brother. I care for the two of you. More importantly, I love you. You carry something big in your shoulder. Why don't you share it with me? Narima said softly. She wanted to help her brother. She wanted her brother to trust her just like he always did. She wanted to help ease the burden he had on his shoulder. Naruto's features softened when he heard his sister's answer. His political persona faded to reveal his true one. Being inducted into the political circle made him quite cold, it seems. Narima only wanted to protect him. But Narima had to realize that she can't protect him forever. There are some fights that are better left to him. There are some things that he can't tell. And this problem between him and Sasuke is one of those things. Narima, I know you only want to protect me, and I appreciate it. But you can't protect me forever. Naruto's voice softened and Narima bowed her head slightly. It's true. She can't protect her brother forever. But it doesn't mean she can't try. Naruto, brother, I know that. She walked towards her brother and hugged her. She felt Naruto also hug her and she sighed before she continued. But I want to. You are my baby brother. I am your older sister. I am supposed to protect you. Narima, he pulled back and cupped his sister's face. Narima, listen to me. When he saw Narima looking at him, he continued. You are protecting me. By being here with me always when I needed you. By not leaving my side even through all the odds. You are my other half, Narima. We are almost one. I know more than anyone that you are protecting me. They only stared at each other's face for how many minutes? Naruto noticed Narima's tears and he wiped them off. She looked at him and smiled sadly. You're not going to tell me, aren't you? Naruto only smiled sadly and Narima got her answer. He won't tell a thing. She can ask all she want but he would not answer. And knowing her twin well, he wouldn't budge. Narima sighed. She wouldn't get anything out of him. And she knew she wouldn't get anything out of her husband. She tried, but he wouldn't give in. He wouldn't even look into her eyes. At least she and her brother got to talk about this. Their talk this day cleansed many of their doubts. It was an unusually very beautiful day the next day. Naruto woke up feeling lighthearted. The talk he and Narima had yesterday night made him feel lighter. He was in an ever cheerier mood than usual. He smiles brightly that day when he was walking around. He was relaxed. And Naruto just basked in the feeling of lightheartedness he felt. It was rare now that he was announced as the Uzumaki heir. It made him long for his previous life as a normal person again. But he can't return for that life right now. He had many responsibilities. He sighed, his previous cheery manner deflating slightly at the thought. This is one of the reasons he didn't want to be known as the Uzumaki heir. His movements are restricted. His every step was criticized. He didn't really care about what those disgusting politicians are going to say. But for the sake of his family and his people and friends, he had been careful in his movements. But that doesn't mean he's going to act differently. It was before lunchtime and he was walking along the corridors of the castle, admiring the elegant design around, not thinking about the person who helped made them because that would ruin his day. It was still morning, so he had plenty of time to look around before lunch. He was humming under his breath when he saw the person he really didn't want to see. Sasuke. He immediately turned around and walked away from there, fast and silent so as to not alert the youngest Uchiha prince of his presence and to get away from there as quickly as possible. But his bad luck manifested when he heard that unmistakable voice calling his name. Naruto. Naruto quickened his pace. He didn't want Sasuke to catch up to him. He noticed Lan followed him at a more sedate pace. He looked at him oddly while shaking his head. Naruto knew, by using his ability, that Lan was wondering along with many people why he continuously evaded the Uchiha prince. He didn't think about it anymore and just concentrated on walking as quickly as possible. Where in hell are the people here? He thought to himself. He hadn't encountered people for a while now. Did he get lost? He stopped, momentarily distracted at the thought that he got lost when suddenly, a hand closed around his wrist that jerked him off his mind. It was only a second that he recognized who it was that grabbed him suddenly, and due to his reflexes, his other hand shot off towards the person. It was only an inch before it was stopped by the hand of the person who grabbed him. Damn it, Sasuke caught him. Naruto attempted to pull his hand away from the hand holding him, but it tightened. That's when his bodyguard came around and put his hand above the hand holding him quite tightly. Naruto glared at him, his eyes digging a hole at his bodyguard's face. Naruto was impressed when Lan didn't even twitch. Prince Sasuke, I hope you release Prince Naruto right now. Naruto refused to even look at the man in front of him, so he looked around while still listening to the two converse like they're friends. We need to talk, Sasuke had simply said, and the hand hadn't relinquished its hold on him. Naruto finally had enough and he glared at the offending person holding his wrist. I do not have time for an idle chat, Prince Sasuke. I have duties to attend to that you didn't know. I was finally able to relax this time when you decided to grab me from behind, which I insist is not something I ever appreciated, as you can testify from my reflex earlier. I am certain that you also have something to do, so I would suggest that you go on your way now. And I appreciate it if you release your hold on me. Sasuke reluctantly released his hold and Naruto flexed his hand to regulate the blood in his veins. I would also appreciate it if you stop doing what you did today. Here, Naruto looked at Sasuke sharply and Sasuke felt that the next sentence was for different reason entirely. And I hope you didn't do to Narima what you have done to me. Good day, Prince Sasuke. Then he and the guard walked away and left Sasuke standing there. When they were a good distance away and people are already seen trekking their way around the castle, Naruto looked at Lan sharply. You need practice. Naruto's curt statement made Lan wince slightly. This is not going to end well. Call Lee. He's to replace you if you can't move properly after your practice. And warn him of mistakes. Yes, young prince. Lan bowed respectfully. You know where. Lan nodded before walking away. The young prince is angry, that much is obvious. He should have interfered earlier. He should not have given in to his curiosity. Now, the young prince is going to practice with him. This really is not going to end well. Naruto sighed slowly, trying to expel from his system the rage he felt when Sasuke held his wrist tightly. He really needed to release his temper, and the only way is to spar with his bodyguard. He'll just make sure that Lan will be taken care of after the spar, like him. And he had to also make sure that Lan wouldn't hold back or Naruto might seriously injure him because he isn't in his best attitude. As if the people around can feel his not so good mood, they stayed away from him, even the children whom have always been close to the Uzumaki prince. Naruto just walked towards the large tree where he had been when he had impersonated his sister. It's a place he and his sister liked the best because it is relaxing. When he reached there, he leaned against the tree and closed his eyes, tuning everything so he can completely relax. Because of his concentration, he didn't hear a slight commotion and was totally surprised when a strong hand held both his closed eyes, preventing him from seeing if he ever opened his eyes. His reflex kicked in and he immediately raised both his hand and held his attacker's head in an angle where he could easily break his attacker's neck if he wanted to, and growled in a very threatening manner. "Whoever you are, I suggest you get away from me right now." There was silence before a voice answered. "What if I don't want to?" Something tugged at the back of his mind, telling him that the voice is somewhat familiar, but due to his still turmoil mind and his attacker's immediate movement of getting away, it escaped his mind and he immediately found himself fighting his attacker, whom he had later on recognized as his best friend. "Gaara, you idiot!" Naruto shouted in irritation. He found an opening when Gaara backed away at his shout, caught off guard at his irritation. Naruto immediately jumped in closer and twisted out of the way at Gaara's reflexive kick before he landed a heavy punch at his best friend's stomach. Gaara braced for the impact because he knew he cannot avoid being hit in time, but it wasn't enough and he found himself lying on the ground, groaning in pain. "Damn, Naruto, that hurt," Gaara said, still feeling pain at the impact. Due to his position, he wasn't able to protect himself when Naruto knelt down and hugged him tightly. "You idiot, are you trying to kill yourself?" Gaara winced at the loud voice close to his ear, but still he answered, finding something wrong with what Naruto said. "You won't be able to kill me without me at least also killing you," Gaara said simply, and Naruto finally laughed. It made the redhead smile at the carefree laugh he can hear. He didn't want to see or even hear Naruto's voice with a negative vibe. Naruto's irritation earlier really took him off guard. Those moods are rare for his blonde friend. Naruto pulled back and looked at his red-headed friend, grinning. I can think of a way to do it." At Gaara's raised eyebrow, he continued. "I could just give you to your familiar when he's in his vicious mood." Here, Gaara's eyebrows raised a little higher before he snorted. "You wouldn't dare." "I would. Ichibi loves me," Naruto said cheekily. Gaara's eyes widened slightly at the truth Naruto had said before he sighed in relief, which earned him a huge grin from his friend. "Good thing I left him alone, the little bugger. What did you tell him anyway that made him like you so much?" "That's a secret between him and me," Naruto said with a mysterious air before going back to his bubbly self. He stood up and offered his hand on the still on the floor Gaara. "Stand up there, redhead. Let's surprise Narima. That is, if you haven't told her yet." He looked at him in suspicion and Gaara was relieved that he hadn't told Narima his unexpected visit. Naruto looked like he wasn't pleased at something. "I haven't," Gaara said. "Good. I thought I'm the only one in the dark again." Naruto's answer was, and Gaara realized what made his friend miffed. "You're still stinging from my request 3 years ago? Naruto, you must be the only person I know who can hold a grudge that long with just a small thing." "That was not a small thing," Naruto said indignantly, minding that everyone was looking at them. Some were looking at them in a speculative manner and Naruto was afraid they had connected the dots. 3 years ago was Narima's wedding to the youngest Uchiha prince after all. He didn't know that the people were really speculating about his and Gaara's relationship, not about the wedding 3 years ago. Because of his born curiosity and because he also wanted to know what the people around were thinking, he opened his ability a little bit and used it to know what they are thinking. And laughed out loud. Gaara looked at him weirdly. "What's gotten you so happy now?" he asked, but instead of answering, Naruto laughingly dragged him towards somewhere he didn't know. After all, Gaara hasn't visited the Uchiha kingdom since. He waited until Naruto stopped laughing, but he just laughed all the more harder and Gaara finally stopped because his blonde friend was leaning towards him, laughing hysterically like some kind of demented clown. "I look like a statue here, Naruto, with you laughing at my side. What is making you so hyper now?" he finally asked again, throwing at the back of his mind his decision of not asking until Naruto stopped laughing because as he can see it, he won't be stopping anytime soon. Naruto gasped for air, holding his red-headed friend for support. His stomach was aching from too much laughter but he can't seem to stop. At Gaara's question, he laughed again even though he had strained to stop from laughing again. "Huh? They think?" Naruto stopped again from speaking and tried to stop his hysterical laughter before speaking again. It just made him need more air than usual if he tried to speak while still laughing. When he can finally control his laughter, he continued. "They think we're a couple or along those lines." Naruto said, and he saw Gaara's eyebrow rose slightly and his lips were twitching slightly at the side. Really? Gaara asked, and at Naruto's enthusiastic nod, Gaara leaned towards his friend slightly and whispered in his ear. Why don't we try making them think like that? Naruto gaped at his red-headed friend, even though he shivered slightly at the warm breath ghosting his ear. What? Did he heard it right? What? Naruto choked the question and Gaara was then the one who laughed. Naruto pouted childishly. He had been played with again. Gaara just is too confusing to read sometimes, even with his empathic ability. He don't use his telepathic ability to others he trusts, so he never knew what Gaara's thoughts really are, but he can read his emotions. And it was a mixture of frustration, sadness, amusement and playfulness all rolled into one that it was making Naruto confusing. Is it possible to have so many emotions at once? He slapped Gaara's shoulder. You keep on springing that side of you with me. Warn me sometimes. Gaara just looked at him knowingly. Naruto just sighed. Come on, let's go to Nerima. Sasuke looked at the red-headed figure beside Naruto darkly. Who is that twit, coming too close to Naruto? As the two walked away from the spot he is in, his thoughts remained on the two even when they were out of his sight when they turned a corner. They were reacting really close to each other and it's making him completely jealous. They laugh too intimately with each other, too close. They even do things intimately like it's natural that he growled slightly. Is Naruto with that redheaded? What's it to you anyway? A voice sounding suspiciously like Naruto said at the back of his mind, which he thoroughly squashed. He didn't want to think about that right now. What he wanted was an opportunity to talk to Naruto without him walking away. He formulated a plan to get Naruto to talk to him. Lan was surprised when he saw his young master return to his bubbly self with a redhead beside him. Lan's physical features did not move, but he was surprised to see the Subaku ruler there. He left his kingdom? Who's there to manage? Don't tell me he left Temari in there? Lan let out a snort at the thought. Temari, Gaara's sister, was vehement on not taking the throne when their father suggested she must deal with the political fight. She said she'd rather blow them up to pieces than deal with thick-headed and selfish politicians. How'd he know? Well, he is Temari's best friend, childhood friend of the Subaku siblings, as he was born and raised at the Suna kingdom. Even when his mother remarried and moved to the Uzumaki kingdom, he still hadn't stopped corresponding to them. In fact, they're one of the reason he is now the leader of the royal guard. The other is because of his own strength and perseverance. Lan shook his head again. He really hoped Temari wasn't left there, or Gaara might return to a disorganized council. Maybe he left Kankuro there? Lan thought to himself as he walked slowly towards his young master. Naruto might be laughing now, but he might return to his foul mood earlier when he saw him. At least Kankuro can deal with the misleading and cunning ways of a politician. Though he might annoy them just for his own enjoyment. Lan shook his head and stood up straight before showing in front of his young master and bowed. He did not kneel, as it might ignite his young master's irritation, especially when he is obviously not in an angry mood at the moment. Young master, he heard a growl, but Lan ignored it, more for his own sake so he can continue what he wanted to say than to be disrespectful to the young prince of Uzumaki. Are we going to continue to spar or designate it for another time? The growl stopped, which made Lan breath a little easier. He didn't ever want to experience the wrath of any Uzumaki he served. There's something in them that made him literally afraid. Afraid to disappoint them and especially anger them. Strangely, almost all the people he encountered that met the Uzumaki ruler say the same thing. It made him glad he had served the Uzumakis. They may be extremely kind and considerate for someone their status, but they also are dangerous to cross. It's one of the reasons their kingdom flourished so well. No, Lan, I'm going to let it go until we need it. And Lan, the voice commanded his eye contact that he raised his head slightly to look at those bright blue eyes that held a particular warmth Lan hadn't known anyone possessed. The eyes that held compassion, honesty and intensity that made him realize why he had made a particular oath of being a protector of the young prince. That made him so loyal to his young master that he would follow him even through all the hardships. That bright blue eyes that held his attention for a long time and so unlike the Uzumakis he had previously served. The eyes that said how strangely human his master is. And made him swear that whatever happens when he is with the young prince, it's worth every second than he had staying in the castle as the royal guard leader. I'm sorry. The voice was full of emotion that Lan was overwhelmed. It seems he wasn't the only one as the red-headed Suna leader looked on and slowly sucked in a breath and released it. The two words was said with many meanings that Lon felt he isn't worth of being respected like he is the one of royal descent instead of the blonde man in front of him. Lon straightened out and looked at the young prince straight on and said in a firm voice he didn't know he can own. I will go back to my station along with Lee Naruto. When he had said the words, he knew it was right even when he felt he should have said something more formal because of the beaming smile he got. Lon was about to go on his own routine of following the young prince in the shadow when someone embraced him from behind and shouted, "Lhan." He winced at the volume and saw at the corner of his eyes that both Gaara and his master were looking on in amusement. Temari. Lon sighed. Who else would have the courage to jump in a royal guard and assume that he or she would not be incapacitated by screaming on their ears? Of course it's Temari. Your luck, Lon, Gaara said to him in amusement, and Lon silently groaned. Gaara had been teasing him with Temari since they were a child. Surely he won't do it again? But seeing that look from his childhood friend, he knew Gaara would continue to do it. Hey Naruto. Can I borrow Lon for the day? Please, please? Lon looked on his friend, horrified for taking him from his supposed duty. Naruto laughed on his guard's expression and Gaara chuckled at Temari's puppy eyes pleading at Naruto. Alright, after all, Lee's here. Naruto glanced at his right and saw Lee standing guard. Lee waved enthusiastically and was bursting with energy. Naruto nodded and Lee's exuberance was gone and was replaced by a serious look. But, Lon tried to protest but he was instantly cut off. No protest, Lon. Besides, we were supposed to be sparring right now and then you'd be dismissed from your post for resting. That's why I called for Lee. Why don't you just take that rest right now and assume we had sparred? When Naruto saw Lon was about to open his mouth to protest again, he looked on more seriously and said, Or do you want us to spar right now? I don't mind being confined to bed for the time being. Which Lon was wise enough to shut up. Thank you, Naruto. I haven't been able to walk with Lon for a long time. Temari explained. Just take care of my sister Lon. Gaara said to him with that serious voice of his that Lon covered his eyes. Gaara is starting again. Lon nodded stiffly and heard a chuckle. He ignored it for he didn't want his master to ask what is wrong. Temari waved at them and dragged off the still stiff Lon, stinging from being dismissed from his post. Oh come on Lon, chill out. Everyone needed to relax. Look at them. They're the leaders of their kingdom yet they left so they could relax even just for a day. You might as well do it too, especially when it was granted to you. Lon sighed, knowing that he had no choice. He nodded at her and said, Let me change. My attire isn't appropriate for strolling. When Temari nodded, he told her to wait at the garden and took off. Temari's right. He needed to relax even just a little so he is going to enjoy this day with his childhood friend. Besides, he had missed Temari greatly. Because Lon's back was turned, he hadn't seen Temari's smile and her determined eyes looking at him. Naruto looked on his bodyguard with an indulgent smile. Then it turned into a wicked grin. Temari's parting grin just couldn't get itself out of his mind. It was conveying itself to him and the message was perfectly clear. He may have been single for how many years and his family might think he is a bit naive on romantic aspect, but he isn't. Maybe a little bit, but not at this. Temari was imparting a message so clear even a blind person would be able to read. What is it in your mind now? Gaara asked him. Naruto turned to look at his friend before walking again towards where he knew Narima is based on their connection. I'm just thinking how Temari seems determined to have my guard for the entire day. He answered in a matter-of-fact voice. Gaara looked at him with raised brow. You do realize that you're talking about my sister here, right? Naruto walked on slowly and turned his head to look at his red-headed friend. This time he is the one who raised his eyebrow. And you do realize that Temari is my friend, right? And the man she is with is my guard, which happened to be your childhood friend. Gaara sighed and Naruto grinned at him. Besides, I know you read what Temari's grin was all about, right? I suppose I know. How can I not when her message was clear as day? The only problem in that plan is Lon. He is a bit naive when it comes to relationship, it's frustrating. He looked at his blonde friend beside him and said in a perfectly serious face. But no as bad as you. Hey, Naru. Gaara. A feminine voice exclaimed and the two of them turned and saw Narima walking towards them quickly sporting a formal but indulgent smile at them. How could you not tell me that you're coming? You should have told me at the same time as my brother. When she is close, she pulled Gaara in a tight hug. Actually sis, he didn't tell anyone that he's coming along with his sister. I thought he told you before me. Naruto said dryly. Narima pulled away and looked at Naruto the same way as Gaara looked at him earlier. You still held a grudge for me leaving you with only a note and going to Suna with Gaara's request? Narima asked dryly. Gaara looked on amused at the fact that Narima also had the same deduction as he did earlier. Naruto though looked at his sister pouting. Why do the two of you always had to bring that up? Narima looked at Gaara and seeing him looking amused and nodded at her, she smirked quite a bit. Because you seem to be stinging from it, and you hold a grudge for too long than any other girl I know. Hey, come on, I'll introduce Gaara to Sasuke and tell the royalties, who are chatting in the parlor about the unexpected arrival of one of our friend. Narima said dramatically. Naruto bust out laughing while Gaara just shook his head. The three of them chatted while going to the parlor room where the leaders of both powerful kingdom are chatting. The people who had seen them looked on with awe at how common they act with the rest of the people not from royal descent. It was quite refreshing really, especially from the youngest prince's wife who always is formal when in public setting. Naruto thought the day is brightening for him, that even the rage he had felt earlier cannot mar his marvelous day. He thought nothing in this day could get any surprise out of him. If he could just read the future, he'd know how wrong his assumption is. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.